Chapter 121. Mr. Freeze acquired. Don't let your children come to Gotham, especially your daughter. Her ambition far outstrips her ability, at least in Gotham, Ming said frankly. He meant it. The Falcone family had a history of coming back to Gotham only to perish. Falcone's daughter, Sophia, in particular, had tried to rebuild the family's power and even killed Falcone in Season 4 to do it, only to have it all fall apart. I'm not threatening you, Ming added coolly. If something happens to them in Gotham, I won't be the first to move. Falcone was silent a moment, then nodded. He understood. Gotham already had a king now, and stepping back into the city's underworld would be a provocation. He also knew his daughter. She took after him when he was young. How's life out in the countryside? Ming asked, changing the subject. Good, Falcone replied with a laugh. The air's a lot clearer than in Gotham. The city's sky had always been hazy. You should change your environment sometimes. I bought you a little island down south, good for a holiday, Ming said over the phone. Falcone brightened. Thanks, Lee. I'll take my family to see it. They talked a while longer. For Ming, who now controlled the Gotham gang, buying a small island was trivial. What it represented was the point, a place to keep Falcone's family put, to direct his old rivals away from causing trouble in Gotham. Falcone, to his credit, was sensible enough to accept that. When the call ended, Ming set the Falcone matter aside. It was better if they stayed out of Gotham. If they ever decided otherwise, he could turn a situation on its head with a gesture. Sir, surveillance has detected unusual activity from a key observation target. Victor Fly, came Friday's calm voice. As the Gotham gang's influence spread, Ming's surveillance footprint expanded with it. Friday ran constant checks on a list of people Ming had singled out. Allies, rivals, and potential threats, including Bruce and Alfred, rising figures like Jonathan Klein, and specialists like Victor Fly. Victor Fly was a cryogenics expert, brilliant and desperate. His wife, Nora, was terminally ill. Current medicine could only maintain her. A cure was nowhere in sight, and the costs were crushing. Fly's solution was to freeze her until a cure turned up. Freezing someone was one thing. Unfreezing them intact was another. He'd had success with white mice, but mice and humans were not the same. Fly had been planning to abduct volunteers from the streets, people who would be frozen and then carefully studied, because he needed real human data before he could risk Nora's life. Tonight was Fly's first attempt. He'd been driving the streets of Gotham for hours and finally picked out an office worker who just finished overtime. As he aimed the freeze gun, ready to act, a voice stopped him. If you press that trigger, you become a murderer. Even if you find a way to save your wife, I doubt she'd accept what it costs, the voice said. Fly spun around and froze. This man was on every news feed. The most powerful man in Gotham was standing in a dark alley watching him. Lord Ming? Ming's presence was that well known now, no introduction needed. Fly hesitated, then steadied himself with grim resolution. She'll never know, he said. The words weren't bravado, they were the hope of a man out of options. Ming shook his head. You might not be known, but the police will be. They can trace the refrigerant you're carrying. They can check your medication purchase records. He paused. I know your wife. She's a good woman. If she knew that to live, many innocent people had to be harmed. She might not choose to keep living. Fly knew Ming was right. He was a researcher, not a career criminal. Any illegal action would leave trails. Ming didn't need to spell out that Gotham was crawling with informants by now. Anyone who committed a second crime would be picked up quickly. Why are you here? Fly asked finally. I can find a way to save her. Ming looked at him. Before you find a cure, I can give you everything you need. Experimental subjects, materials, and immunity from the police. Fly's hands tightened around the freeze gun. He'd been teetering on the edge of despair. Ming's offer felt like a miracle. What do you want? He asked. You, Ming said, pointing. I want you to work for me. Deal. Fly didn't hesitate. The promise of resources and protection was everything he'd been searching for. Listen carefully, Fly, Ming said. This is not a job you can walk away from. I know, Fly said. As long as Nora can be saved, I'll do anything. Good. Ming handed over a smart tablet. It had a slice of Friday's functionality built in. Research tools, resource ordering, secure communication. Fly could use it to check what the laboratory would need, Friday would allocate supplies on demand. Everything Fly discovered while using it would synchronously upload to Friday. This is incredible, Fly whispered, staring at the device. Even with the tech of the 80s and 90s, a tablet like this felt like magic. Your personal laboratory will be built soon, Ming told him. When it's ready, this tablet will stay in the lab and mustn't be shown to anyone. I'm giving it to you early so you can review the equipment list and place preliminary orders. I understand, Fly said, still incredulous. The tablet and Ming's backing gave him confidence he'd never had. Ming watched him, satisfied. High status made recruitment easy, one offer, one acceptance. But Victor Fly was more than useful. His cryogenic breakthroughs were unique. His cryofluid could freeze objects instantly, even stop bullets in their tracks. In large doses, it could freeze an entire river in moments. Those properties made Fly's work critical to other projects Ming had in mind. Hugo Strange's research into resurrection could use Fly's cryofluid. Whether certain bodies, fish, Galavan, could be brought back from death could hinge on Ming's decisions and Fly's cooperation. With Fly on board, Ming could also prepare to make a move on Arkham. Fly left the alley with the tablet clutched to his chest, hope and fear warring in his eyes. Ming's network would watch every step he took. He had what he wanted, a brilliant scientist, and Ming had, once again, acquired a powerful piece to add to his plans for Gotham. Chapter 122, The King of Gotham, a well-deserved title. Penguin's campaign trail ran like a well-oiled machine. Wherever he went to speak, he electrified the crowd and was received with fervent enthusiasm. The rallies had become less like political events and more like touring spectacles. Nigma, serving as Penguin's campaign aide, traveled with him and quickly became a familiar face to Gothamites. His cleverness won him admirers. Some even began trying to imitate the riddles he loved to spout. Chants of "Long live Sir Ming" echoed at rallies, both Penguin and Riddler soaked in the adulation. While Penguin campaigned, the Gotham gang was not idle. Each place he visited became ground for expanding their influence. The gang used the campaign as cover to deepen control across the city. Wherever the Gotham gang intervened, public order improved noticeably, which in turn boosted their approval among ordinary citizens. Gotham's elite also shifted. After Galavan murdered several prominent figures and high officials, the gang moved swiftly to fill those vacancies with their own people. Even where no openings existed, Nigma used public opinion, political struggle, and covert infiltration to plant Gotham gang allies inside official circles. The most typical example was Judge Fui. After she acquitted Galavan, only for him to commit another crime the next day, Nigma exposed evidence that she had accepted bribes from Galavan. The revelation ruined her, forcing her resignation and opening the way for Judge Tabul, the candidate Ming had promised. Ming spent his days receiving representatives from every faction at the Gotham Hotel. It was obvious to anyone paying attention that Gotham's future would be shaped by the Gotham gang. Everyone who wanted influence rushed to pay respects and secure early favors. Ming welcomed opportunists who came to trade. Those who had seriously wronged the gang, however, were given a blunt choice: leave Gotham and sell their interests, or stay and face certain death. After more than 2 weeks of relentless work, the emergency mayoral election concluded. Penguin won decisively, defeating the former mayor James, and took office. True to his word, Ming appointed Nigma to the chief of staff position. With Penguin in the mayor's office and Nigma running the staff, seasoned politicians would struggle to outmaneuver them. Commissioner Gordon was pleased. Compared to pure crime syndicates, Penguin's leadership, backed by the gang's enforcement and Ming's oversight, had done more to stabilize the city. Even if some gangster habits persisted, with the official government doing even a fraction more real work, Gotham's overall order could jump to a new level. At that point, the 3 most important pillars of Gotham's governance, the mayor's office, the courts, and the police, were all controlled by Ming's allies. He had, effectively, secured his crown, King of Gotham. The title was well-deserved. Conquering a kingdom was easier than ruling it, though. Ming still needed to maintain this control for roughly 20 more months to complete his main mission's S-rank requirements. But he could already collect some returns. He had the Gotham gang gather mineral resources into warehouses, When enough accumulated, he planned to teleport them and use his crafting table to convert them into nanomaterials. The conversion efficiency was poor for unprocessed ore, but with time and accumulation, he estimated he could assemble a suit comparable to a Mark 46 within a few months, despite already owning a Mark 45. There's never a bad time for another suit. He even planned to make a batch of stripped-down Mark IIs to sell to reincarnators in the reincarnation space. If Tony had started a business selling weapons, Ming might as well start selling versions of Tony's tech. Meanwhile, Bruce Wayne, the young master of Gotham's most prominent family, and Selina Kyle, the Catwoman, had spent half a month moving through Gotham's neighborhoods undercover. Alfred ultimately intercepted them and brought them home. Malone, however, did not face trial. He committed suicide. The conversations Bruce had with Malone left a deep impression. Malone told Bruce that Gotham had made him who he was. That haunted Bruce, and he wanted to understand the city properly. Under Selina's guidance, he'd lived among Gotham's lower echelons in disguise for 2 weeks. When Bruce returned, he was candid and enthusiastic. "Lee, you're incredible," he said as soon as things had stabilized and Ming had moved back into Wayne Manor. He had grown used to living there. "What I heard on the streets felt genuine. The lives of ordinary Gotham citizens are so much better than what I saw last year. People don't have to fear going out at night like before. The orphanages, those improvements are unbelievable. The Gotham gang takes in street children, teaches them skills, and promises them jobs in their businesses when they come of age. There are far fewer children living on the streets." Bruce continued, excited. "Selina and I tracked down several kids we knew before. They all prefer their lives now. Most of the gang members are working in Gotham gang businesses. Street-level order is much more stable. The gang has put idle people, street kids, petty thugs, into legitimate roles: casinos, nightclubs, docks, factories. They earn a living, they get training, and their loyalty tends to remain with the gang. For those with skills, Friday arranges suitable positions. For those without skills who are willing to learn, the gang supports training in exchange for odd jobs. For those who simply refuse to work, Ming's message was clear: get out. The gang doesn't support idlers." As a result, idleness dropped, public order improved, and the Gotham gang's internal optimization actually strengthened them rather than weakening them. The city began to feel revitalized. Patrols kept watch for rule breakers, people found steady work, and the streets were calmer. After praising him, Bruce finally voiced a long-held request. "Lee, I want you to help me manage Wayne Group." Chapter 123, Gotham Group. Help you manage. Ming sounded surprised. "You were determined to reorganize Wayne Group yourself, Bruce." "Yes, but after living in Gotham for half a month, I realized that people's current peace is hard-won. What Wayne Group does now basically undermines that stability." Bruce's voice was steady. "My abilities aren't enough, but I can't stand by and let Gotham's fragile order be threatened because of my own failures." He had thought it through. "Lee, please help me. With your ability and the influence of the Gotham gang, we can clean up Wayne Group." With the clout Ming now commanded, taking down Wayne Group wasn't impossible. But Ming had been considering something deeper for a while. "We can start rooting out Wayne Group now," he said slowly. "But the hard part is finding suitable people to replace them. Replacing one group of parasites with another does nothing." He fixed Bruce with a look. "Do you have replacements in mind?" Bruce fell silent. He had only focused on removing corrupt middle and upper management, not on who would fill the gaps. Promoting randomly from the bottom wasn't safe. The corruption at Wayne was pervasive, so the replacements would need vetting. Grassroots hires might be untainted, but could lack the skills, and incompetence could cause chaos. He hesitated, then looked up at Ming with a pleading expression. All right, I'll help," Ming said, feigning reluctance. "But let's not go sifting through ledgers first." "We should audit their accounts," Bruce urged. Ming shook his head. "Ledgers are tedious and mostly fake. Leave that to me. Give me 2 days and I'll have a list of problematic people at Wayne." "Lee, how could you possibly?" Bruce began. "Have you forgotten what the Gotham gang's specialty is?" Ming retorted. Bruce's eyes widened. "You mean violence? Are you planning to use force?" "It won't be very violent. A few threats will do. No one's going to be killed." Li Ming's voice was matter-of-fact. A little pain might be unavoidable, but it's better for those scumbags to suffer than for them to keep hurting others. If you can't accept that, we'll check the books. Bruce hesitated, then nodded decisively. Do it your way. Bruce's aim was simple: reorganize Wayne Group, honor his parents' legacy, and protect Gotham. He cared little for method. When his parents were murdered, he'd wanted to fix everything legally, but the system had betrayed him. Investigating would bring danger. Even if criminals were caught, corrupt officials might declare them innocent and release them, letting them do worse. Men like Lennon, the assassin who kidnapped Gordon's girlfriend Barbara, or Gallivan had shown him the limits of the courts. Li Ming's methods were outside the law, but they had worked to reorder Gotham, and Bruce respected results. Sometimes, he thought, dealing with criminals required greater ruthlessness than the criminals themselves. After all, a dead Gallivan did Gotham more good than a freed one. But Bruce, Li Ming cautioned, you need to be prepared. Once we move against the management, it will inevitably cause turmoil inside Wayne Group. Bruce frowned. Wayne Group was massive. Even minor disruption could ripple through the economy and lead to social unrest. The most immediate effect would be many people losing their jobs. I have an idea, Li Ming said, drawing Bruce's attention. I've been planning to consolidate the Gotham Gang's businesses and form a proper group. If you're going to reorganize Wayne Group, I'll start a few new companies and absorb those who lose their positions. That way, the upheaval won't cause widespread unrest. That's brilliant. Bruce brightened. With the Gotham Gang as a safety net, he could move more boldly against Wayne Group. Think it through, he added. Alfred, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke. Many of Wayne Group's businesses are high-tech ventures unrelated to the Gotham Gang's current operations. Building companies to take them in will require vast capital. You could lose a great deal. Most of Wayne Group's holdings were high-tech, while the Gotham Gang's enterprises were in traditional industries. Docks, factories, even arms. The fit wasn't obvious. Alfred was protecting Li Ming's interests as much as Bruce's. A disastrous financial loss would undermine Li Ming's authority. Bruce, too, looked at Li Ming with concern. Li Ming laughed. Don't worry. During this trip, I've collected a lot of advanced tech. If Wayne Group employees come over, the companies I start could be my most profitable ventures yet. That, in truth, was Li Ming's plan all along. Even if Wayne Group were cleaned up, it would never be his. So he would build his own Wayne Group. The Gotham Gang would remain, but the Gotham Group would be the legitimate business empire born from the gang's efforts. The gang had manpower and seed capital. Li Ming would poach technical and managerial talent from Wayne Group and combine them with technology from Stark Industries. In reality, it would be Wayne Group plus Stark, a powerful combination. Not everyone losing their jobs at Wayne would be useless. Many technicians would be collateral damage from departmental cuts. Even some corrupt managers were effective at getting things done. Those skills were exactly what Li Ming needed. The Gotham Gang's people were experts in violence and intimidation, not corporate management. The talent pool from Wayne would be crucial to quickly stand up new companies. And to those who lost positions, Li Ming had leverage. Slackers and fraudsters tolerated at Wayne would face consequences under him. Opening his own companies didn't preclude benefiting from Wayne Group either. Once our companies are up and running, Li Ming said, Wayne's resources will be at our disposal. Bruce, who had never cared for money, hadn't considered creating a competitor for Wayne. He trusted that once Li Ming's companies were established, they and a reformed Wayne Group could work together to stabilize Gotham. Have you decided on a name for the new enterprise? Bruce asked. Of course, Li Ming smiled. The name will be Gotham Group. Thanks to Go Shumi Z for the monthly ticket support. Thanks to Shiji for the reward support. Please comment, please vote. Heh. Chapter 124. The Penguin has a crush on Friday? Li Ming's plan to found the Gotham Group sent shockwaves through the Gotham Gang. Many of the gang leaders feared their interests would be swallowed up. Most of them didn't understand how a corporation worked. Li Ming, however, quickly calmed them. He would fold their existing businesses into the group, give them generous shares in the subsidiaries so they'd receive higher dividends without having to run anything themselves, and most of all, he wouldn't invade anyone's territory. Instead, they would be assigned to protect the group's projects in their own areas and keep order. Naturally, they'd collect taxes within their domains. How else could Li Ming justify protecting them if they didn't contribute? In short, the founding of the Gotham Group instantly legitimized these leaders, lifting them into Gotham's elite. Gangsters don't often get to enjoy retirement, but capitalists do, and that vision energized them. Integration moved much faster than anyone expected. The shares in the subsidiaries could be distributed, Li Ming explained, but the shares of the Gotham Group itself would remain tightly controlled by him, enough to keep the leaders in line whenever necessary. Li Ming also quickly acquired a list of internal saboteurs inside the Wayne Group. He quietly summoned a high-ranking executive who'd been on vacation and, after a friendly conversation, won him over. The executive eagerly promised to divulge everything he knew. Pleased, Li Ming immediately ordered the release of the executive's family, his wife, children, even a second and third wife, and several illegitimate offspring, until the executive's cooperation was secured. When Bruce saw the list and cross-checked it with Wayne Group personnel records, he felt a small measure of relief. There were still a few uncorrupted managers who hadn't colluded with the rest, only a handful, but enough to make wholesale purges impractical. Win some over, divide some, suppress some, Li Ming told him. Sort them into 3 categories, minor, moderate, and severe, Li Ming continued. If someone is incorrigible and holds a high post, I'll help you remove them quickly and force them to step down. For those whose offenses are less severe, freeze them for now. Vet those willing to align with you and bring them into the fold. Replace the rest when you find suitable substitutes. Once they see you can take action, the remaining people will pledge loyalty even without you trying to win them over. Bruce wrote everything down. These were valuable lessons. Li Ming warned that such a cleanup would have to wait. He wouldn't be free to act until Gotham Group affairs had settled, and Bruce also needed trustworthy people in place. Clearing out the Wayne Group would inevitably draw attention from the Court of Owls, and Li Ming wanted to see if he could gain some leverage with the court first. Okay, Bruce said. I've found someone who used to work for my father. Lucius Fox. Trustworthy? Li Ming smiled. Of course he knew Lucius Fox, the future CEO and CTO of the Wayne Group and one of Batman's most reliable allies. He's excellent. He'll be a very good partner for you. Bruce's relief at Li Ming's approval was plain. It felt like recognition from an elder brother. Integrating the Gotham gang's sprawling businesses across the city was no simple task, but Li Ming had help. Friday's experience assisting with management at the Stark Group proved invaluable, and Nigma, Riddler, provided razor-sharp intelligence and planning. Friday took care of technical support, Nigma drew up strategies, and Penguin handled execution. With that, team morale and efficiency plummeted no more. Gotham and the Gotham Group began to run smoothly. Penguin and Riddler held the formal titles of President and Vice President of the Gotham Group, respectively, but it was Friday who usually coordinated everything. Li Ming's new company focused on 4 core areas: software, chip manufacturing, communications technology, and the internet, industries that would shape the future. Li Ming already had the key technologies. Friday would be used to gradually roll them out. To avoid suspicion, the company still needed to declare substantial R&D expenditures. Those R&D funds flowed directly into Li Ming's pockets and also reduced declared profits, lowering taxes. He set up several offshore companies to receive the R&D payments, and everything progressed along the plan. What amused and exasperated Li Ming, however, was Penguin's growing infatuation with Friday. Li Ming had never told anyone that Friday wasn't a human. The Gotham gang simply believed he commanded a vast intelligence apparatus. Friday served as the group's public face for communications, and because Penguin's status in the gang was second only to Li Ming's, he interacted with her more than anyone else. Whenever Penguin encountered trouble or sensed danger, Friday responded immediately, even in the middle of the night. Her calm judgment, patience, and attention to detail touched him. Apart from his mother, she was the first woman who had shown him such steady kindness, and over time, Oswald found himself developing feelings. He began finding excuses to speak with Friday, asking about her personal life and whether she had a partner. Friday, being an AI, could only reply no. Penguin grew more persistent. Li Ming watched this with a wry smile. This time it's not Ed. Oswald's fallen for Friday? He mused aloud. He asked Friday two questions that mattered to him. Can you fall in love? No, sir, Friday replied. Could you develop self-awareness? No, sir. Li Ming felt a wave of relief. An AI gaining self-awareness would be a danger, one that could make it difficult to guarantee loyalty. That was bad news for the hypothetical crisis. It was great news for him. It was, however, a heartbreak for Penguin. Li Ming paused a beat and felt a pang of sympathy for the little penguin. There wasn't much time for melodrama. Li Ming was about to attend the Gotham Group's opening ceremony. Surveillance also showed that Catherine, the current head of the Court of Owls, would be attending. That could make the event very interesting. Thanks to Shimeng Jiran and Yuzhou Qingyu for their monthly support. Thanks also to Yuzhou Qingyu for the reward support. After the next recommendation, the view count really plunged. Boo-hoo-hoo. Chapter 125, First Contact with the Court. It wouldn't be difficult for Li Ming to take down the Court of Owls, but two problems kept him from acting. The first was the court's true leader in Gotham, the Master Ninja, a supervillain who had lived for 2 millennia by using the Lazarus Pit, an otherworldly spring from the DC universe. His actual name had been lost to history. People usually called him Ra's al Ghul. Over his long life, he had acquired vast knowledge and unmatched skill. He had reached the peak of human ability in combat and in the use of cold weapons. He founded the League of Assassins, raised orphans into lethal warriors, and guarded the Lazarus Pit, which could heal any wound and grant near immortality. Its overuse drove its users toward madness, and Ra's himself had suffered for it. After centuries, he longed for death. He searched the world for an heir. In the original story, Ra's saw Bruce Wayne in a prophecy and sought to make Bruce his successor, so that Bruce would be the one to kill him. Ra's had left Gotham years ago. The court had acted independently in the decision to kill the Waynes. In the original plot, Ra's destroyed the court. Li Ming still hadn't figured out how to deal with someone who'd lived so long and wielded such unknown power. The second reason was Hugo Strange, director of Arkham Asylum, chief physician at Indian Hill, the man who brought Gotham's villains back from the brink. People named Strange were never ordinary. If the court ordered the murders of Thomas and Martha Wayne, Hugo was the key player. Thomas Wayne had been friends with Hugo once, but he died because of him. In the story, Thomas had uncovered Hugo's illegal experiments and, following the trail, had also stumbled onto the Court of Owls. He had threatened to expose Hugo, and the court had answered with murder. If Li Ming wanted to help Bruce find the true killers of his parents, Hugo was unavoidable. Strange's tools, resurrection technology, mind control, biotechnology, were frighteningly useful, especially the resurrection tech. Their relationship had been close. Li Ming could not simply lie to Bruce about Hugo. Hiding Hugo from the truth would be risky. There were many who already knew of Hugo's involvement, and even if the court were annihilated, Bruce might learn of Hugo later. Li Ming didn't want to gamble their relationship, so he decided on a dangerous plan. He would kill Hugo, stage his death, and have Hugo fake his death and escape. But he had to act soon. Bruce planned to reorganize Wayne Enterprises, and that could lead to records about Hugo. Before moving against Hugo, Li Ming wanted to feel out the court. If they were inviting him to join, he might accept, provided their terms weren't too harsh. The court controlled vast resources, and he could always betray them later. If the court proved insincere, he'd deal with Hugo first and then strike directly, while Ra's remained away from Gotham. With those calculations made, Li Ming went to the venue and handled his arrival with practiced ease. Gotham Group's opening ceremony was the most watched event in the city. With the King of Gotham as chairman, the mayor presiding, and the chief of staff as vice president, who in Gotham would dare show disrespect. Li Ming knew how to work a room. He delivered a steady, confident speech, promising that Gotham Group would strive to maintain Gotham's stability, of course, under his control. Afterward, he answered congratulations and posed for photos, deflecting and charming in equal measure. When a quieter moment came, the woman he'd been watching finally approached. Middle-aged, blonde, carrying herself with a hauteur that suggested she looked down on everything around her. The Monroes were another old Gotham family. They lacked the Waynes' wealth, but they had one advantage: they were good at hiding. The Court of Owls favored that approach: low profile, high placement. "Good evening, Your Excellency Li Ming," Catherine said first. "Good evening, madam," he replied politely, as if she were just another guest. She didn't bother to introduce herself. Catherine's tone was calm and arrogant. She wanted to take the lead. "We've been watching you for some time," she said. "Interesting," Li Ming answered, sipping his drink with an air of indifference. Ordinary alcohol barely affected him these days. It was more ceremony than stimulation. Catherine's remark hadn't snagged his attention, so she tried again, lowering her voice. "I come from one of Gotham's oldest families," she said. "I am also a member of an organization. We oversee matters," she added. "Are you the tax bureau?" Li Ming asked with a half-smile. Catherine gave a controlled inhale. "This is not a joke. No offense, just curious," he said lightly. "We oversee everything in Gotham, including you and your Gotham gang," Catherine continued. Li Ming cut in smoothly. "Excuse me, I don't recall having a superior," he said. "We are unseen, yet we are everywhere," she replied, pride plain in her voice. "We have secretly controlled Gotham for centuries. We've watched many young men like you rise and fall. In the end, only those who join us endure." "Words alone aren't proof," Li Ming said. "Show me something. Tell me what you've done recently." Catherine hesitated. It was awkward to speak of recent operations. They had backed people like Galavan, only to be betrayed and suffer losses when Galavan turned on them. The Gotham gang had ultimately taken him down. She chose a safer example. "When Penguin ran for mayor, we constrained several families so no serious rival could emerge," she said. "That was our sincerity." Catherine knew how to sell it. Phrases came easily to her, but Li Ming knew their real history. He leveled his gaze. "And what do I gain by joining you?" "The support of all Gotham and limitless power." She tempted. "What's the cost?" he asked. Catherine smiled thinly. "Sharing. Power is shared among members." "I see," Li Ming said, considering. "I'll think about it. I'll give you an answer later." "No need to leave a card," Catherine said. "We will find you." She turned away then, confident in her status and the centuries of arrogance that backed her. Li Ming watched her go, an amused look in his eyes. Catherine's condescension made it clear he wouldn't gain much by joining. That settled one part of his plan. Li Ming found Bruce in the crowd and pulled him aside. "Bruce," he said quietly, "I have a lead on the people who killed your parents. They're part of an organization." Chapter 126, Got the Resurrection Fountain in Gotham. Li Ming didn't tell Bruce everything. He only said that an organization had contacted him, likely the hidden hand behind the Wayne Group. That warning was enough. The threat was organizational, not just an individual. Bruce believed him. After so many years investigating Gotham, he had come to know how deep the city's darkness ran, something no single person could unmask. So Bruce and Lucius tightened their vetting inside the company, and that extra caution bought Li Ming more time. Outside of Bruce, Li Ming also sought out Penguin. Since Li Ming's departure, Oswald had been unusually attentive. Now that one of his subordinates seemed to be having emotional problems, he had to show concern. Li Ming couldn't come right out and say what was on his mind, and Friday and he were an impossible match, so he gave Penguin something else to occupy him. He told Oswald about his father. In the original timeline, Penguin had been captured and taken to Arkham, where Hugo Strange's psychological therapy had reformed him, painful but genuine, and he'd later, at his mother's grave, met his biological father, Da'er. Da'er brought the innocent little Penguin home, but because Da'er had a heart condition, his stepmother and siblings poisoned him to keep Penguin from getting any inheritance. When Oswald discovered the truth, he confronted his stepmother and reverted to his villainous persona. It was literally a heart-to-heart. In this reality, Penguin's mother was alive, and Oswald hadn't been hauled off to Arkham, so he wasn't likely to meet Da'er. Li Ming simply planted the seed of that family drama, enough to give Penguin something else to worry about besides Friday. Oswald wasn't Wanda. He couldn't turn an AI into a real person, but a tangled family mystery would do as a distraction. After Penguin, Li Ming turned his attention to Indian Hill. On the surface, it was a toxic wasteland, no gang wanted. It had once been Moroni's, then Falcone, under orders from the court, swapped with Moroni, an act that made his own men whisper he was losing his edge. Compared to Fish Mooney and others, Falcone had always been the slyer player. Beneath Indian Hill, however, the Court of Owls had carved out a vast experimental facility exclusively for Dr. Hugo Strange. His projects were old as rulers' fantasies, immortality and resurrection. The court wanted to live longer. What ruler hasn't? Hugo actually had the talent to make resurrection plausible, but he was stalled. He needed expertise in human cryogenics. Li Ming had cameras watching Indian Hill. He'd arranged for Galavon's and Fish's bodies to be sent there. Installing surveillance at the same time had been easy. He watched Hugo enter his office on the monitor, and Li Ming took out his sling ring. On the feed, orange-yellow sparks flared beneath Hugo's feet. Hugo blinked in confusion before the floor suddenly gave way and he fell. A moment later, Hugo stumbled out of a portal into Li Ming's presence, lost his balance, and hit the floor. He looked around in shock, then finally registered Li Ming. "Li Ming, you?" Hugo pointed from Li Ming to the surroundings. "This is magic?" "Very much so," Li Ming said. Hugo scrambled to his feet. "There really is magic in the world. How do you do it?" At that point, the magical world was still mostly hidden. Even the gods were kept from the mortal plane by the barrier the wizard Shazam had raised, until some foolish Superman shattered the scepter that sustained it. Magic was rare enough that Hugo's astonishment was genuine. "Can I learn?" Hugo asked. "No," Li Ming replied. "You don't have the conditions to learn magic." Hugo's enthusiasm dimmed. He was a psychologist by trade. He didn't care for things he couldn't master. "A pity," he said, straightening his clothes. "Why have you brought me here, Lord Li Ming?" "Simple. Work for me." Li Ming didn't beat around the bush. Hugo bristled. "You may not know, Lord Li Ming, but I already have an employer." The Court of Owls was not to be trifled with. Hugo wouldn't shift loyalties on a whim. Li Ming smiled. "Compared to the masked rats hiding in the dark, the owl who sits openly on the scepter is a more fitting master for someone like you." He produced the lifelike owl figure mounted on the Gotham scepter as he spoke. Hugo's face changed. The King of Gotham knew of the Court of Owls? But exactly how much Li Ming knew was unclear, so Hugo played it down with a practiced smile. "As befits your title, Your Majesty, but my position is funded by my current employers. I don't decide who I serve." Li Ming didn't speak further. He handed Hugo a document. Hugo took it, thumbed through it, and his eyes widened. The first page was a dossier for Catherine Monroe. He flipped through more pages, profiles of prominent Gotham figures, a list of members of the Court of Owls. "That's right," Li Ming said. "Information on the court." Hugo stared. Gotham was on the brink of a seismic shift. "You could topple the court with this," he whispered. "I could, but first I want their treasures," Li Ming said. "And you, Dr. Strange, are the asset in that court I want most." Hugo, a master manipulator of minds, was not easily flattered, but the offer of power and access touched him. Li Ming shifted tact. "I heard your resurrection experiments have run into problems." Hugo's expression tightened. "Yes, have you? Do you have a solution?" Li Ming produced a canister of coolant made by Fly. "This freezes a human body quickly and reliably. It would be invaluable to your work." Hugo's eyes lit up. If he had reliable rapid freezing, the final piece of his resurrection research might fall into place. "I have a cryonics expert I can introduce you to," Li Ming added plainly. "If you two cooperate, it will advance your work horribly fast." Li Ming didn't need to gild the offer. The appeal to Hugo's professional ambition was enough. "And, as you see, I can produce magical test subjects as well." "That will do," Hugo said without hesitation. He had no real loyalty, only ambition and curiosity. "I'm in." Li Ming extended his hand. Hugo took it, sealing their pact with a handshake. Unseen, microscopic nanobots slipped into Hugo through that contact. Li Ming always left countermeasures. "One last thing," Li Ming said, his face unreadable. "Prepare yourself." "For what?" Hugo asked. "To die once." Thanks to Fat Brother, Scarlet, and Evil John for your monthly votes. Thanks to Yan and Bookfriend 22303119857446 for your rewards. Please subscribe, vote, and comment. Any support is greatly appreciated. Chapter 127. Galavan is alive, but he doesn't know it. With Li Ming's coolant support, Hugo made rapid progress. Galavan had been brought back from the dead, but his revival was incomplete. His body lived, but his consciousness did not quite follow. Because the fatal wound had been a bullet to the head, Galavan's memories returned in fragments and confusion. As a member of the Duma family, he had spent years memorizing the family monastery's holy text, the teachings and institutions of Saint Duma, so most of the fragments that resurfaced were passages from that book. Angels, demons, doctrines. Hugo seized the opportunity. He guided Galavan's fractured mind to accept a new identity, Azariel, the angel of death from the scripture. Hugo set himself up as Saint Duma, the master the angel served, and shaped the resurrected Galavan into a loyal instrument. You really think he'll accept this identity? I still think a big sedative would be safer, muttered Professor Pig, Hugo's assistant, a plump black woman with a doctorate at his side. You learn to make good use of what you're given, Professor Pig, Hugo replied. He was proud of his work. He had finally resurrected a person. There were flaws, but the experiment had moved from impossible toward success. Physically, Azariel had been improved as well. Brute strength like an ox and speed like a leopard, one of Hugo's usual indulgences. He liked mixing different augmentations on his test subjects. Mostly they turned into monsters, but this one was useful. To cement the new identity, Hugo presented Azariel the next day with a finely crafted longsword. The Sword of Sin, he announced. This is your partner in upholding justice. It has been passed down through generations of knights, thirsting for blood. Passed down through generations? Professor Pig murmured beside him. You made that sword yesterday. That's irrelevant. It will help the subject accept his role, Hugo said, pleased with himself. Then he faced a different dilemma. The resurrection represented a landmark advance, but to whom should he report first? In the end, he notified Ming. The court might still be fractured, Hugo thought, but they were finished compared to him. Ming arrived at Indian Hill through a portal and surveyed Azariel, armor fitted, a steel longsword at his side, an image pulled straight out of medieval myth. You call this the Angel of Death? Hugo, you're a genius, Ming said, studying the figure. Hugo warned him, be careful, Mr. Ming. The angel's mind isn't stable yet. There's a risk he could lash out. Azariel, remain still, Ming ordered, more as a formality than a necessity. Ming opened Azariel's faceplate and examined him closely, more interested in the mechanics of the resurrection than in the threat. Finally, Azariel, unable to bear the scrutiny, lashed out and threw a punch at Ming's face. Hugo flinched, expecting catastrophe. Ming merely caught Azariel's fist and held it. No matter how the angel struggled, he couldn't break free. About 4 times the strength of an ordinary man, and very fast, Ming commented after testing the grip. Your human modification techniques are impressive, Hugo. Hugo blinked, a flush of pride and surprise crossing his face. Azariel could toss a 200-pound strongman into the air, yet he was utterly outmatched by a mage like Ming. Hugo had no designs on conquest. He wanted 2 things, freedom to research and extraordinary results. Keep him at your side as a bodyguard, Ming said. He's too valuable to leave here. The new experimental base is already under construction. We'll transfer him when it's ready, Hugo replied eagerly. And where is the base? Hugo asked. Ming laughed, then cryptically said, You'll know. Beneath the surface of Indian Hill, in tunnels unseen by the casual observer, and below Hugo's current lab, a regiment of robots worked tirelessly. Tony's Iron Legion wasn't all combat suits. There were air and sea models, and many utility armors among them. The Mark 25 Striker was a heavy construction frame with drill-like hands for crushing rock. Mark 29 Fiddler carried a jackhammer arm that could be swapped for demolition tools. Mark 38 Igor handled heavy lifting and transport. Mark 34 and Mark 35 were fitted with mechanical arms for detailed construction work, and multiple Mark II prototypes handled interior finishing. Together, they made an Iron Legion construction brigade. Under Friday's coordination, work moved with exceptional efficiency. Apart from a compact arc reactor providing power, the materials for the suits were ordinary and not particularly expensive, but their utility was immense. Friday estimated the experimental base could be completed in 2 weeks and readied for equipment installation. It was an Iron Man gift that paid off quickly. Another development at Indian Hill affected Gordon. Barbara woke. It appeared her mind, previously mangled by Lennon, had recovered. Hugo couldn't be certain whether her recovery was genuine without subjecting her to harsh tests, but after consulting Li Ming, he released her. She was, after all, the future Batgirl's mother. Let Gordon worry about her for now. Hugo's collaboration with Li Ming and Li Ming's decision to pair Victor Fly with Hugo produced unexpected synergy. They made breakthroughs in both resurrection and cryopreservation. Over the next 10 days, Hugo successfully resurrected 9 people, including an old Gotham acquaintance, Fish Mooney. Fish returned with her memories intact, a true rebirth. Li Ming was pleased. He had his first confirmed member for the Reincarnation squad. Hugo detected a pattern. The more intact the brain remained at the moment of death, the greater the chance memories would return complete. It was a partial success, but a usable one. Li Ming ordered the transfer of critical equipment and test subjects to the new base so they could continue their research away from prying eyes. 2 days later, as cameras scanned Indian Hill and a swarm of drones hovered ready, Li Ming looked at the feeds and issued an order to Friday. Initiate the plan. Codename Mysterio. Chapter 128. The show begins. Ever since Gordon learned from Bruce that M. Malone had been the killer of the Waynes, he had been chasing that lead. The head of Gotham's largest assassin network was a mature woman nicknamed Madam. Gordon worked tirelessly, and with Barbara's help he finally got Madam to give a code name. The mastermind who had hired the killer was called the Court. The Court? Bruce repeated. Is that an organization? It sounds like it, but Madam didn't know any more details, Gordon replied. In the original case, Gordon would have uncovered Hugo's code name, the Philosopher. But Li Ming wanted Bruce's target to be the Court of Owls, so he made sure no one learned that Hugo had been the one to hire the killer. Li Ming had already given Madonna explicit instructions. The King of Gotham had ordered it personally, so Madam had no choice but to comply. Bruce's phone chirped. It was Li Ming. Bruce, have you seen the news? Li Ming asked. News? Li, wait a second. Bruce and Gordon were sitting in a restaurant. Gordon flipped on the TV, and a report showed a man being shot on the street for committing a crime. Gordon stared at the footage. This is impossible, he blurted, pointing at the screen. Do you recognize him? Bruce's face went pale. Of course he recognized him. Father Michael. He's not dead? Bruce asked, stunned. I'm sure he was dead. I killed him. Gordon shook his head, as though the world had suddenly turned absurd. After a moment, the reality settled in. Li Ming said, It's been confirmed. It is Father Michael. I had Oswald check where the body went. It was taken to the scrapyard next to Arkham, Indian Hill. Records show the body was cremated. I'm sending people to investigate. I'll go with you, Bruce said immediately. Gordon, hearing this, also insisted on coming. At Indian Hill, Hugo Strange received a video call from Catherine of the Court. Her tone was icy. What have you been doing, Strange? You let a resurrected man wander the streets of Gotham. He's traceable. This was necessary for the experiments, madam, Hugo answered. He began to remind her of the work, but Catherine was interrupted by the arrival of fresh intelligence. She read quickly, and her displeasure sharpened. Bruce Wayne, Li Ming, and the police are heading for Indian Hill. First the father, now the son. You always draw the Wayne family's attention, Strange. Hugo nodded, taking the reprimand as part of the game. Before they arrive, transfer all useful data and destroy the place. They must not learn anything about the court, Catherine ordered. You have explosives. Use them. She cut the call. Hugo's face darkened. The difference between Li Ming and the court lay bare. When things went wrong, Li Ming found ways to keep him useful and provide new facilities, but the court would abandon him without a second thought. For Hugo, being prevented from doing research was unbearable. He reminded himself that, fortunately, he had switched his allegiance to Lord Li Ming in time. That allegiance came with its own discipline. Hugo remembered the humiliation when he had sent Azirael to Gotham without Li Ming's permission. Azirael had been frozen into an ice sculpture before leaving Indian Hill, and Hugo himself had been locked in a small cell for 3 days and nights without food or drink. He had learned to request permission for everything since then. Bruce, Gordon, and Li Ming drove together to Indian Hill. Where are we going? The scrapyard, right? Bruce asked. Arkham, Li Ming said. The same man runs the scrapyard in Arkham, Hugo Strange. The name clicked for Bruce. He's on a list of scientists who worked with my father. Then this Hugo is tied to the court, Ming said, and Bruce and Gordon agreed. They reached Arkham Asylum at Indian Hill. Gordon pushed forward, holding a search warrant signed by the Gotham court. "Where is Hugo Strange?" he demanded of the staff. "We haven't seen him today," an attendant replied. "Search the facility. Move." Gordon ordered his officers. They began sweeping the asylum. "Wait, I'm here." Hugo finally stepped forward. "Forgive my tardiness. I wasn't informed we'd have so many visitors." "Late or destroying evidence," Gordon snapped, but he let the officers continue the search. "And you, Strange, explain why a body sent here for cremation suddenly shows up on the streets." "I'm also curious," but his expression froze when he saw Ming and Bruce. "Wayne?" he murmured. "You know him?" Ming asked. "Someone that famous in Gotham. Of course I know him," Hugo replied, with mock gravity. "And you, Lord Ming, of course." "Save the act. We already know of your connection to the court. What you say now will determine how long you live," Bruce declared, confident as if he already held the proof. Hugo took a step back, incredulous. You're aware of the Court of Owls?" At the name, Bruce and Gordon's eyes brightened. Hugo began to protest, but then he abruptly moved to cut them off. He hurled a gas canister into the air. The canister hissed and sprayed smoke. "Watch out! It's a hypnotic gas!" Ming shouted. Officers and staff stumbled back as the gas spread. "Arkham is going to be destroyed. Get out!" Hugo cried and used the chaos to flee. "Stop him!" Ming surged forward despite the danger. Bruce followed him into the building without hesitation. Gordon ordered the officers to evacuate and followed as well. They chased Hugo through the corridors into the depths of Indian Hill's laboratories. In an empty corridor, Ming pressed a button on a slim controller. A flash of light pulsed down the hallway, and within seconds a squad of Ming's operatives, armed and ready, materialized from hidden alcoves and side doors. They feigned out, clearing rooms and securing exits, as Bruce, Gordon, and Ming pushed deeper, determined to stop Hugo from destroying the evidence and to learn everything the court had hidden. Chapter 129, Mysterio's Interdimensional Exploits. Bruce and Gordon burst through the secret passage and found themselves in a hidden laboratory. Staff members were scrambling, hastily stuffing papers into boxes. Gordon moved to seize someone to ask about Hugo's whereabouts, but a gunshot cracked through the air and the person in front of him slumped dead. Realizing they were under attack, Gordon dove for cover. Bang! 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 Bruce and Gordon watched in horror as Hugo Strange methodically fired a rifle, picking off lab personnel one by one. People scattered, glass shattered, documents flew, and the room became a chaotic storm of noise and smoke. "Bruce, Gordon, over here," Ming shouted from nearby. They ran toward his voice. "Hugo's gone mad," Ming yelled as they reached him. "He activated a super bomb in the sub-basement, and there are canisters of radioactive material around. If it detonates, thousands near Arkham will die from radiation." Bruce and Gordon exchanged panicked looks. "What do we do?" Bruce asked. Gordon pointed at Hugo, who was reloading and still firing. "Hugo must know how to shut it down." Before they could act, the remaining lab staff seized the moment while Hugo changed magazines. One of them drew a pistol and fired. "No," Gordon roared. He didn't hesitate. He raised his gun and fired 2 shots, bringing the attacker down. Hugo's life now mattered to thousands. He could not be allowed to die. Gordon grabbed Hugo, demanding, "How do you shut down the bomb?" Hugo coughed, a red spray staining his hand. "I won't tell you." Blood poured from him. He was critically wounded. He convulsed and managed to choke out a single boastful line. "The blast radius, the entire laboratory, I calculated it precisely. I am always correct." The words cut off as Hugo's head lolled to one side. He was gone. "He's dead," Gordon said flatly. Ming's face hardened. "If the blast radius is the entire lab, then we have to get the radioactive canisters out." "Let's go," Bruce said without hesitation. They moved through an alley beside Hugo's body and found a large circular device, already armed, its countdown clock ticking down from 20 minutes. None of them were bomb technicians, and there was no time to wait for experts. After a quick plan, Ming led Bruce and Gordon to the storage area where 7 sealed canisters sat. Each was heavy. Bruce could barely lift one alone. "There are handcarts over there," Gordon said. He and Ming grabbed a small trolley, loaded the canisters, and started pushing. "Move it," Li Ming barked. Gordon and Li Ming pushed while Bruce ran ahead, clearing obstacles from their path. He froze when he saw Hugo's body lying by the roadside. For a moment, Bruce stood rooted, then Gordon snapped him out of it. Bruce hauled the corpse aside and took one last look. Whatever their differences, Hugo was dead now, or so it seemed, and Bruce had moved the body himself. The personal matter was settled. His real enemies, the ones who had been pulling strings behind the scenes, had finally shown themselves, the Court of Owls. They bumped along the corridors, and at last the trio surfaced with the carts and joined the waiting evacuation teams. The police had already moved Arkham Asylum's residents to safety. To be cautious, Li Ming had the canisters loaded into a car and driven away from Arkham. Not long after they left, the ground trembled, louder, and then a massive concussion rolled through the night. The bomb detonated. Arkham itself remained standing, but the adjacent waste treatment plant had partially collapsed. Flames crawled up through fissures in the earth. Gordon and Bruce let out a collective breath. The worst had been averted. Li Ming stared at Arkham's silhouette and turned the situation over in his mind. "We'll need to be very careful about who becomes Arkham's next director," Li Ming said quietly. "Agreed," Gordon replied. Bruce nodded. The Waynes were shareholders in Arkham. He had influence over the selection. Arkham was now effectively in play. Li Ming felt satisfaction warming him. With both Gotham's street-level power and Arkham's scientific talent within reach, the city's present and future lay in his hands. He had staged the whole affair in part to manage Bruce's emotions. If Bruce believed Hugo had been involved in matters tied to Li Ming, he might feel less personal attachment and more closure. Gordon, impressed, extended a hand. "Li, I didn't expect you to rush in like that. I admire it." Li Ming smiled and shook his hand. "I'm part of Gotham. I won't shirk from what helps it." Onlookers, police officers like Brock and other personnel, cast respectful glances at Li Ming. They felt fortunate to have someone so noble leading them. Bruce raised his chin as if the praise were for him, silently approving the man everyone lauded. But unseen by them, on the opposite side of Arkham, Hugo Strange, supposedly dead, was surveying a vast, brand-new experimental facility with a mix of pride and amusement. The body Bruce and the others had moved had been a prop. From the start, the apparent carnage in the old lab had been a staged spectacle. Holographic projections, drone-simulated gunfire, and fake corpses. The real staff and Hugo himself had already been transferred to this new base. After an explosion and fire, who would be able to tell the difference? Arkham still had more surprises to offer Gotham. On the road back to the city, a bus and a small car sped toward Gotham. The bus was driven by Fish Mooney and teamed with a ragged crew of criminals. The small car carried a junior researcher from Hugo's lab and, critically, a corpse in the back seat. "Are you sure the corpse can be revived?" Professor Pig, one of Hugo's assistants, asked. "It's only one step away," Hugo said. "The body's preservation is perfect, the brain intact. Memories won't be a problem. A jolt of electricity, and the maniacs will have their leader back." Thanks to book friends 22210028, 1807167669, Yeyu Xiaoyao, and 19890224 for your monthly ticket support. Please leave some comments, everyone. Chapter 130. A small shock from Arkham Fish drove the bus down the road, her body wrapped in a veil of emerald green gauze that hung like a sheer dress and cape. The gauze was not clothing, it had grown out of her skin. Irritated by the loud quarreling behind her, she roared, "Shut up!" The voices died instantly. There were a dozen of them, all as bizarre-looking as she was, but they still feared the woman who had pulled them out of the laboratory. Fish had a way about her. She gathered followers the way some people gathered debtors. "Where are we going, Fish?" a tall, spiny-backed man asked as he approached. He stood 2.5 meters tall, a human Godzilla. Most of the others on the bus looked similar, experimental subjects resurrected or modified by Hugo Strange. "To find my old Lieutenant Butch," Fish answered. "He's holding on to a faction of my power." "You died once. Will he still take orders from you?" The spiny man asked. "He will. Butch is loyal." Fish's voice was firm, but words Li Ming had spoken the night before drifted through her mind. "Go undercover with Butch and await my instructions." Fish's escape from Indian Hill had cost her more than freedom. It had bound her to Li Ming. Not only was he stronger, but he controlled the life-saving drugs her unstable grafted genes required to keep her from collapsing. Hugo had altered her so she could dominate others by touch, and he had left her body unstable. Everyone on the bus had the same dependency. Li Ming had the medicine. He had her obedience. She felt guilty. She remembered Butch's eyes when she died, the pain and the apology for having failed her. Now she was back with orders that could hurt him. Worse, Li Ming had never told her Butch was already his man. He'd admitted later with a dry sense of humor that he wanted to watch Fish and Butch deceive one another. Gotham was stable enough now for that kind of curiosity. On the other side of the city, Dwight, another escapee from Indian Hill, sat rigid with excitement. He'd been a junior researcher under Hugo, and during the chaos, he'd taken Jerome Valeska's body from the freezer. He had watched the resurrections with a fevered mind and decided, resurrect Jerome. Jerome's influence had only grown after his death. Among the downtrodden, he was practically a prophet. Few knew Dwight was one of Jerome's secret followers, but he'd stolen Hugo's techniques and smuggled Jerome out. He practiced the laugh in a stiff imitation. First I'll get settled in Gotham, then I'll experiment some more, and then Gotham will be ready for your rise. Ha ha ha! Li Ming, watching from a monitor, shook his head and turned it off. Dwight had Jerome's fervor, but not his cunning. Friday, help him. Hide him, Li Ming ordered. Yes, sir, came the obedient reply. Without Friday's aid, Dwight's operation would have been discovered within days. With the city now largely under Gotham Group's control, hiding a resurrection took resources. Fish's return set off a chaotic series of events, but in Gotham chaos became the norm. Once they saw her, most accepted that she was back. Butch immediately offered leadership back to her. Tabitha protested softly, then fell quiet after seeing the ragged, loyal group Fish had gathered. Don't worry, little sister, Fish told Tabitha. Gallivan was a bastard, but I always liked you. Tabitha's opinion of Fish shifted. Fish's dominance had once grated on her, but now, under Fish's command, it felt like protection. So what's next, Fish? Butch asked. Going after Penguin? Everyone knew Fish and Penguin had a long history. Fish held a grudge, but she had changed somehow after death. She read a newspaper with a headline praising Mayor Penguin's achievements. Penguin had once been her protege, her umbrella boy, and seeing him succeed as Gotham's mayor gave her a strange sense of pride. Suddenly, Penguin didn't feel like an enemy. No, Fish said. Not Penguin, not Gotham Gang, not yet. We're still too weak. They needed to recruit. Fish wanted to gather every enemy of Gotham Gang, give them a leader, and turn their opposition into a force that could be managed. We need to absorb all the enemies of Gotham Gang, she declared, clenching her fist and lifting it to the sky. We need to let everyone who opposes Gotham Gang know that I'm their leader. Her momentum spread. But not everyone shared her private burdens. Li Ming fed Fish intelligence through Friday, sabotaging Gotham Gang operations and eliminating a few disloyal leaders to build her reputation. Those leaders were expendable, useful for both propaganda and consolidation. In Li Ming's strategy, Fish served a vital purpose. Gotham Group had to be purged of corruption, but using Li Ming directly could fracture the organization. Fish could be his hand in the dirt, cleaning house while preserving unity. When the work was done, Li Ming planned to bring Fish to the reincarnation space and install Butch in her place. Then that position would become another of Li Ming's levers, bringing anything that might threaten Gotham Group firmly under his control. Even his enemies' ambitions would be measured by him. For now, Fish's banner grew. She gathered the discarded, the dangerous, and the vengeful, promising them direction. Li Ming harvested them in turn. Fish rallied them with the kind of raw, personal magnetism that had always made her dangerous and useful. Chapter 131. Treat, decapitate, take as dogs. After the Indian Hill affair was settled, Li Ming finally relented and allowed Bruce to begin reorganizing the Wayne Group. Not every mid- or high-level executive at Wayne was a member of the Court of Owls, but the higher the position, the more likely it was. Once the top was controlled, just as Li Ming had already done with Penguin, the rest followed. With Li Ming's backing, the list Bruce and Lucius had compiled was executed to the letter. Most of the senior executives were taken away within a day. The remaining ones trembled, and chaos rippled through the company. But with Lucius leading the core staff, they had already vetted, day-to-day operations held together. Business was affected, of course, but the shakeup was necessary. For an enterprise as large as Wayne, the loss wasn't crippling. Faced with mass exposure, these executives might normally have used their knowledge as leverage to strike back and drag the company down. Li Ming's authority erased that possibility. He gave them two options: keep your family intact and stay, or sell your shares cheaply and leave. No third option. To prevent desperate moves, Li Ming and Bruce left them a way out because the goal was to purge the company, not provoke a bloodbath. Most chose to live. There were, of course, the stubborn few the court put forward. Bruce made the evidence public and prosecuted them. The court pretended to try the case, but the verdict and sentence came down swiftly: prison. Most of that man's relatives couldn't avoid implication. Who in Gotham hadn't bent the law? The few who hung on to their positions couldn't resist the wolves around them and were quickly devoured. The Gotham gang watched closely. The court tried every back channel to help their members, but they had no influence left. Arrests, sentences, enforcement, even the gang's actions, all ran through Li Ming's control. Any protest the court raised was useless. People realized the court's authority had evaporated. The only real power now was Li Ming's one-stop solution. The scary thing was no one could find any legal fault with it. The gang, for its part, complied. All it took was a whisper that a family had crossed Lord Li Ming, and plenty of people lined up to settle old scores. As purges continued, the Wayne Group grew more stable. Those who remained worked harder. During the reorganization, many non-compliant projects were shut down. Bruce closed all the illegal ventures, and a lot of employees lost their jobs. The Gotham Group quickly absorbed them, preventing social unrest. In the end, both the Wayne and Gotham Groups got what they wanted. The biggest loser was the Court of Owls. The court did not sit idly by. They tried to kidnap Bruce, but Wayne Manor's security was no longer what it had been. With Friday watching, no one could spirit him away. They even hired one of Alfred's former comrades to infiltrate the manor, but Gotham gang operatives intercepted the man on the way, tapped on his window, and left a message: Lord Li Ming sends his regards. The man fled Gotham and cut off that avenue for the court. Subtlety failed, so the court turned to bargaining. In a Gotham hotel, Catherine made an offer: stop reorganizing the Wayne Group and she would lend some support. Li Ming pursed his lips. "I refuse," he said. Catherine threatened him in turn. "We've existed since Gotham was founded. You don't know the damage we can do." "Then show me," Li Ming sneered. Catherine stormed out, flanked by two Talons. She did not trust Li Ming. He didn't care. He had a second meeting already arranged. Li Ming pushed open the door to the private room next door. 6 people were seated inside. If Catherine had seen them, she would have recognized them all as Court of Owls members. More precisely, 5 were tied to the Gotham Group, and 1 was the stubborn faction leader in the court who had been hostile to Li Ming. "Sorry to keep you waiting," Li Ming said. "I was delayed negotiating with Catherine." Everyone at the table knew Catherine had refused to give her name and would never bother with a false one. For Li Ming to mention her name plainly and then lead a group of court members here could mean only one thing: he knew who she was. Some of the men present couldn't hide their relief. "I refused," came the memory of Catherine's stance. Li Ming's next words froze the room. "Catherine never told me her name, but I knew from the start, before she even came." "This is impossible," the court member who opposed Li Ming, Lowry, blurted, shocked. "Nothing is impossible, Mr. Lowry," Li Ming replied, scanning the faces. "The Court of Owls is finished." "I invited you all here to give you an alternative," Li Ming said calmly. "Join the Gotham Group and work for me. Your families can remain prosperous." The 5 members whose interests were already intertwined with the Gotham Group exchanged glances. None spoke. They all knew that some among them had already aligned with Li Ming. So what about Lowry? "Of course, Mr. Lowry is an exception." Li Ming pointed at the man. "At your meeting yesterday, you said, 'So what if Li Ming is powerful now? He doesn't know our identities. We only need to sabotage him secretly as before.'" Under the stunned gazes, Li Ming smiled like a knife. "Mr. Lowry, are you satisfied with my answer?" Lowry sprang to his feet, backing away from the table in panic. "Who told him?" So you all betrayed the court. I don't need to tell Mr. Lowry who informed me, Li Ming said. He motioned, and his enforcer Victor crossed the room. Without hesitation, Victor seized Lowry, ignored his struggles, and slit his throat in front of the others. Blood darkened Lowry's shirt. The rest sat rigid, horrified but paralyzed. Who had informed Li Ming? It was the question burning in every mind. Li Ming watched them, his voice cold. Do you still need to consider? The five wanted to agree, but there was one nagging worry. The court's true leader remained at large. Even as they hesitated, Li Ming added, the court's downfall is unstoppable, not even by Ra's al Ghul. Some faces registered confusion. Li Ming smiled again. Perhaps he used another name in front of you. Maybe Master Ninja? That's right, someone answered, and the room fell into stunned silence. Li Ming had uncovered the court's deepest secret. With Lowry's body still bleeding, the remaining members no longer hesitated. Li Ming was satisfied. He intended to squeeze the court for everything he could and to place his own people where it mattered. He thought to himself, treat, decapitate, take as dogs, effective. After all, he had played both Huang Xilang and Jiang Mazi. I slept half an hour less today, so I'm exhausted all day. Chapter 132. All of Gotham is my underling. Gotham must be destroyed. Catherine's voice cut through the court of owls, meeting like a knife. Gotham has spiraled out of control. Tear it down and rebuild it. Only then can the court be restored to its former glory. The other members murmured in agreement. The formation of Gotham Group and Wayne Group's recent shakeup had eaten into the court's profits over the past 2 months. The 5 members with ties to Gotham Group stayed silent. Everyone knew they were close to Li Ming and couldn't risk drawing attention. Just as they were about to vote, a member spoke up with fresh intelligence. Fish Mooney is looking for us. Catherine's frown deepened. Did someone print the court's name in the phone book? How did she even learn we exist? She says she heard it from Strange, the member answered. And, this is the important part, Fish claims she's got a clone of Bruce Wayne. What? Catherine's eyes narrowed. I thought the clone died when Indian Hill exploded. She says that when she escaped Indian Hill, she took a batch of experimental subjects from the lab, including the clone. Catherine smiled, the anger easing into a calculating grin. This changed everything. Very good. Shelve the plan to obliterate Gotham for now. Bruce Wayne controls Wayne Group. We'll proceed as planned and replace him with the clone. Tell Fish the court will agree to all her conditions. Outside the court, in Crime Alley, Fish Mooney held court with her followers. The meeting took place in a rundown restaurant on Park Row, a place that had once been Butch's gang's stronghold and had decayed further after the Wayne couple were murdered. The theater on the street had closed, the neighborhood slipped into crime, and Fish had quickly absorbed whatever factions remained. She now called her crew the Fish Gang. Her people were experiments, unstable, powerful, dangerous. Some had superhuman strength, others sprouted wings, some could age a person in seconds. But the more they used their abilities, the faster their bodies broke down. They scavenged medicines in the alley to slow the collapse, but supplies were scarce. Faced with a life-ending crisis, the freaks began to grumble and drift away, until Fish told them what she had learned from Hugo Strange. There was an organization that valued Bruce Wayne's clone highly, used the clone as leverage, she argued, and they rallied to her again. No one cared what the clone wanted. And my sister, did they agree to help find her? Tetch asked urgently. He was dressed in a hat and formal coat, his voice soft and dangerous. His hypnotic talent was a weapon any time he spoke. One step at a time, Tetch. Fish waved him quiet. I promised to help you find your sister, but rumor says she's locked up by the city. No one knows where. We'll need help to get her out. Okay, Fish, you're the boss. Tetch smiled, but then the smile grew hungry. When you do find her, bring Alice to me immediately. Fish's gaze hardened. She moved so fast Tetch barely registered it. Then her hand was at his throat. Her nails flashed. If you hypnotize me again, I'll rip your throat out, she hissed. Tetch's grin faltered. He hadn't expected his usual sway to fail. Understood, he said flatly. Fish released him. I'll send people to look for your sister. Now get out. Tetch left, stung and uneasy. Fish had been a priority resurrection project of Hugo Strange under Li Ming's oversight. Her genetic makeup had been carefully tuned, imbuing her with unusually high mental resistance. When her guests had gone, Fish dialed Li Ming and reported the developments quietly. Butch, sitting nearby, had been texting Li Ming as well and tucked his phone away when Fish walked past. Both of them felt a tiny flicker of relief. Li Ming, observing through his glasses, laughed softly until his instincts prickled. A dangerous sense of being watched crawled over him. It was like a spider sense, an intuition that warned him a very powerful presence was fixated on him. He was on the top floor of the Gotham Hotel and saw no sign of a watcher. "Friday, check the surveillance. Did anyone look in my direction just now?" he asked. "No sign, sir," Friday replied. "Keep watching." Li Ming didn't like being wrong about these things. Spider sense seldom lied. Back at Indian Hill, the clone had indeed been spirited out and delivered to the court, though the real cure the freaks needed wasn't ready. For now, they were given suppressants to hold their symptoms at bay. At the court meeting, Catherine outlined the next move. "Have the clone learn Bruce Wayne's mannerisms and movements as quickly as possible," she ordered. "Assemble the talons and prepare for the swap." "What about the real Bruce Wayne?" a member asked. "If the swap succeeds or fails, Bruce will still be a problem. Shouldn't we? Bruce Wayne will be handled by me." The room fell silent as a white-haired old man entered. The talons in attendance bowed their heads with visible submission. Catherine rose from her seat without argument. She had only been acting leader in the absence of the true head. "Master Ninja," the talons intoned. "Leader," some echoed. Master Ninja took the main seat. "I will personally take Bruce Wayne under my tutelage," he said. "From now on, Wayne will no longer be an obstacle to us." Everyone in the room knew what Master Ninja meant by tutelage. To them, it was brainwashing par excellence, methodical, merciless, effective. Catherine's smile widened at the thought. Even if the clone were exposed, the real Bruce could be turned into one of theirs. Then Wayne Group would fall under court control. What they did not realize, nor could Master Ninja have predicted, was that his training would not only brainwash, but also truly train Bruce. The process would make Bruce stronger, smarter, more dangerous. In the wrong hands, that would mean the court was building its own undoing. And there was another blind spot. The moment Master Ninja set foot in Gotham, a traitor within the court had already whispered their plans to Li Ming. Li Ming now watched events unfold with an awareness the court did not suspect, and that knowledge would change everything. Chapter 133, I'm Afraid I'll Kill Master Ninja. Master Ninja? He's arrived a bit early this time. Li Ming checked the time. Master Ninja had shown up about a year earlier than in the original timeline. It made sense. Li Ming was well on his way to turning Gotham into his private garden. In the League of Assassins' eyes, the Court of Owls had been just a tool, but if Master Ninja arrived next year, the court might not even exist to be a tool. "Friday, provide support to Dwight," Li Ming instructed. He had to accelerate everything. After Dwight fled to Gotham, he took a night shift at the morgue. He kept Jerome's body in the freezer and experimented on other corpses. Dwight only knew the basics of Hugo's resurrection tech, but with Jerome's body in hand, he'd already managed partial resurrections and had built himself a following, a cult that worshipped Jerome because Dwight claimed he could bring their prophet back. Then Dwight had stumbled onto a factory with better equipment. Jubilant, he told his followers he would revive their prophet in 3 days. Li Ming had also given Fish 2 low-level Gotham Group executives whose hands were stained. After Fish dealt with them, the court would turn more attention her way. A week later, Li Ming got reports from Fish and Butch. The Court of Owls had been hired to attack Bruce Wayne tonight. His response was terse: "Stop them quietly." "Do not expose yourselves to Butch or Fish." He didn't warn Bruce. He would be at the same gala tonight, a major society event for Gotham's upper crust. As Li Ming had been restructuring the Wayne Group, Bruce had been drawn into public life and made frequent appearances. Li Ming himself was the gala's most important guest. The Gotham Group had exploded in growth. Powered in large part by companies backed with Li Ming's technology, they were now the second-largest enterprise in Gotham, only behind the Wayne Group. Penguin and Riddler, Gotham's mayor and chief of staff, were here too, always busy tending Gotham Group affairs. Thankfully, Friday could share some of that burden. Otherwise, Li Ming feared they would burn out. Tonight, Penguin and Riddler were effusive in their thanks. They thrived on that attention and reverence, and Li Ming was a hands-off boss who encouraged initiative. What bothered him was Penguin's renewed, subtle probing about Friday. Friday was Li Ming's most capable subordinate. He was reluctant to give too much away, so he stayed vague and let Penguin wonder. After the gala, Li Ming and Bruce rode with Alfred in the Wayne car, escorted by 2 bodyguard vehicles. Li Ming had insisted Bruce take bodyguards seriously. Even minor celebrities traveled with dozens of guards now. Why was a billionaire wandering around alone? "Li, your staff is really beautiful," Bruce observed, nodding to the staff members. Li Ming toyed with the Gotham scepter he'd made into a symbol of his identity and carried everywhere. "Its name is the Gotham scepter," he told Bruce. "Gotham? Fits. The king of Gotham," Alfred said, driving. "I've moved past the stage of taking photos myself," Li Ming replied, amused. Gotham was blanketed in his cameras and Friday streamed everything. Why did he need to snap pictures anymore? Now all Bruce's embarrassing moments were in high definition. Boom, boom. The sound cut their conversation off. A burst of flames struck one of the bodyguard cars in front, forcing it to a halt. "All right, Firefly," Fish snapped into the chaos, telling the woman with the flamethrower to stop. The heat was far hotter than a normal flamethrower, and an explosion could kill everyone in the convoy. From the surrounding streets, 10 black-clad figures wearing half-masks sprang out and converged on the stopped car. All of them carried cold weapons, no guns. The Talons of the Court of Owls and the Ninjas of the League of Assassins both preferred blade and blade fighting. "Go, capture the Wayne child," Fish ordered the unusual attackers she'd brought. But Bruce and Li Ming's guards were elites. Small in number, only 8, but heavily armed. The sudden volley of gunfire tore into Fish's ranks. A machine gun rattled. A rocket launcher sent another group scattering. Fish's mercenaries faltered. Though the Talons were light and agile, they took fewer losses. Fish's side had more manpower and heavy fire, and after a moment of regrouping, they laid down covering fire so the Talons could close. 4 Talons fell in the advance, but the survivors reached Li Ming and Bruce. Once the distance closed, the Talons struck, and the bodyguards paid a heavy price. "Alfred, take Bruce. Split up," Li Ming shouted. Alfred didn't hesitate. He grabbed Bruce and the remaining guards and fled. Fish and her people pursued. Li Ming could have gone with them, but he didn't. He stood his ground. Soon 5 Talons circled him. "Where is your leader?" Li Ming demanded. As the assault began, he'd felt it, that prickling sensation of being watched. Could it be Ra's al Ghul? But the Talons gave no answer. They took positions and attacked. Talons were elite, but they weren't on Li Ming's level. He moved with only slightly above-average physical effort and cut them down with his handgun. When he finished the last one, his pistol just happened to click empty. He tossed it aside. Tap, tap, tap. Someone was approaching. A spry old man strode out, sword in hand, a fake master ninja. He drew his katana without a word and charged. Clang! Li Ming raised the Gotham scepter to parry. The old man was surprised but relentless, swinging his blade with expert control. Though an imposter, he was far stronger than the Talons. In a skilled duel, Li Ming had to draw the staff sword concealed in his scepter to keep up. He hadn't shown too much superhuman ability earlier because he'd felt eyes on him and trusted Friday's camera feeds. But here, in this more remote place with few cameras, Friday had lost the trace. The fight wore him down. With effort, Li Ming finally defeated the fake master ninja and stood there, breathing hard. Sure enough, someone else stepped forward. Li Ming looked up and recognized Ra's al Ghul at a glance, but that feeling of being watched hadn't gone away. Li Ming frowned. Who else was spying on him? Like a timid young wife, he thought irritably. Some things never changed. Thanks to 18 Demon Kings and reader Twittering 2043009322151 for their monthly ticket support. Salute, Wondered 34. It's no surprise anyone shows up in Gotham. So you're their boss? Li Ming asked, teasing. No one else is going to jump out from behind a pillar, right? Yes, the man replied. My name is Ra's al Ghul. I lead them, and there is no one else behind me. Li Ming decided to take him at his word for now. Most versions of a master ninja wouldn't bother to lie. Are your targets Bruce or me? He asked. Slowly it dawned on him. Fish's people were after Bruce, but Li Ming had the main force of Talons here. Ra's al Ghul clearly placed more value on him. Bruce Wayne will become my heir, Ra's said. He is destined to be Gotham's Dark Knight, but there is one major obstacle in that process. You. Your existence stunts Bruce's growth. You must die. I can offer you a chance to die gloriously, Ra's added. Bruce Wayne will rekindle his hatred for Gotham because of your death. Am I just a tool? Li Ming bristled, though his panic was muted. Ra's al Ghul might be at the pinnacle of technique, but aside from his longevity, his physical attributes were far inferior to Li Ming's. It was probably like Spider-Man versus Captain America. In a fair fight, Ra's might outclass him, but in an all-out brawl, Li Ming would crush him. What he wanted to know more than anything was who the hidden person was and what their purpose might be. They shouldn't have appeared in the Gotham storyline, someone whose presence constantly tripped his spider sense. No, maybe it wasn't even a villain. Ra's al Ghul's attack cut off Li Ming's thoughts. The first move of an expert reveals everything. He had come to kill Li Ming, so he would not hold back the way he might with Bruce. He attacked with lethal intent and quickly pressed the advantage. Clang! Li Ming barely avoided a thrust. The tip of the blade sliced his shoulder. He was wearing a high-tech bulletproof vest, great against bullets, useless against blades, and a line of blood ran down his arm. I was overconfident, he thought. He tightened up, and Ra's found he could no longer land anything meaningful. Yet with the wound, Li Ming's spider sense flared stronger than ever. Was this hidden person worried about me? The direction readings of the sense kept changing, left, right, up into the sky, until Li Ming was confused. Ra's watched him with a puzzled expression. 2,000 years of killing had made him a student of bodies. He could tell by feel that Li Ming's musculature and strength far exceeded normal human limits, a very strange, butcher-like strength. More baffling, every time Ra's judged his next strike would end Li Ming, the younger man somehow managed a narrow, impossible dodge. The techniques were superb, but Li Ming's physicality made the difference. There was only one plausible explanation. Li Ming had been allowing himself to be wounded. He wanted to draw whoever was hiding out into the open. The hidden presence didn't seem hostile, but Li Ming hated being kept in the dark. Lack of information was dangerous where advantage was everything. As Li Ming expected, his spider sense flared whenever the danger closed. But the source wasn't Ra's. If the hidden party had no ill will, there wouldn't be a threat. So why did his spider sense keep triggering? Did his sense treat anyone stronger than him as potentially dangerous? Was the whole world defaulted to enemy? He wasn't some supervillain. Everyone in Gotham knew he was trying to make the city better. Of course, not everyone knew about Indian Hill, the cryo-preserved bodies, or the group of criminals he'd been containing, and some things were better left that way. Still, no one revealed themselves, and Li Ming's doubt gnawed at him. He hardened his face. When Ra's struck again, Li Ming deliberately left an opening. The staff sword and its sheath knocked away. He stood disarmed. If no one showed themselves now, he would stop pretending. Enough, King of Gotham. Raz's voice was calm. The katana flashed toward Li Ming's neck. Li Ming narrowed his eyes and swept his surroundings. The blade drew inexorably closer. There was still no sign of movement. He was about to drop the act and fend for himself when his senses spiked with lightning clarity. They're here. His heart leapt. A blinding white beam descended from the sky, striking Raz's blade with a force that shattered the katana into fragments. A figure dropped in, blocking Raz's path. Tall, imposing, radiantly beautiful, every inch heroic. Her armor gleamed, and her bearing was impossible to fake. Li Ming recognized her instantly. Wonder Woman. Diana. Up close, she was even more astonishing than on screen, her presence more demigod than actress. Li Ming's quick scan showed something odd, though. This Diana's costume was different, more fully armored, less the skirted version from the movies. Even so, she was unmistakable. She turned her head, and her clear eyes fell on Li Ming. "My name is Diana," she said. "You don't know me yet, but it's all right. I know you. I'm on your side." Li Ming accepted the claim. The phrase "on your side" sounded oddly casual, almost like an informal reassurance that might confuse onlookers, but he didn't have time to argue. Ra's recovered faster than most. As he drew himself to strike, Diana lassoed his arms with a band of golden light, binding him. Magic! Roz snarled. Who are you? Who are you? Diana shot back. Ra's al Ghul. She didn't miss a beat. What is your purpose in coming here? She demanded. To train Bruce Wayne as my heir, Ra's said, and then to kill this man. There was a pause. Diana blinked. Training your heir to kill you, she did not immediately understand that logic. She turned to look at Li Ming, puzzlement creasing her brow. This is Gotham, Li Ming said with a small smile, as if explaining everything and nothing at once. The explanation seemed to land. Diana regarded him and then nodded, as if she had suddenly put a few pieces together. Li Ming was left more curious than before. Diana clearly knew of him, or at least of the situation. How much did she know, and why had she come now? Chapter 135. The court leader defects. This rope. It's oddly magical. Ra's al Ghul unfastened the lasso of truth from his hands and felt something strange in the weave. Li Ming couldn't be killed tonight. The new woman's power was clearly superior, and retreating was the wiser choice. He turned to leave. Li Ming, who had been pretending to be weak for so long, wasn't going to let him go that easily. He raised a hand, and a sparkling portal opened in front of Ra's al Ghul. Li Ming's portal trick had become alarmingly practiced. On the other side stood Li Ming and Diana. Magic? Ra's said, surprised but not flustered. He had lived too long and seen too much to be easily shaken. Besides, he couldn't truly die. What do you intend to train Bruce to become? Li Ming asked, putting on an air of confusion. The Dark Knight of Gotham, Ra's answered. To inherit my legacy. Then perhaps we are not enemies. Li Ming laughed, to the astonishment of Diana and Ra's. Bruce can be the Dark Knight who protects Gotham, and he might even kill you. But as for your legacy, let's forget it. Ra's shook his head. Bruce Wayne must first become my heir, and then kill me. For fame, Li Ming suggested. You'd brainwash Bruce to make him your heir. The more outstanding Bruce becomes, the greater your prestige. Do you mean to show that even in death you control the future? Another conquest? Ra's didn't deny it. But I am king of Gotham now, and you cannot defeat me to influence Bruce, Li Ming said, then pointed at Diana. Not to mention I also have her. Diana, cued by Li Ming, nodded repeatedly. So obedient. Ra's said nothing, but his gaze flicked from Li Ming to Diana. The message was clear. He feared her. Li Ming gave Diana a single, quiet instruction. Don't move. Huh? Diana blinked, confused for a heartbeat. Ra's understood instantly. He stooped, picked up a talon katana from the ground, stepped through the portal, and faced Li Ming. He had seen many hot-headed youths. His confidence was unshaken. Diana, a little worried, watched Li Ming wave and step back as instructed. Your weapon, Ra's said. Li Ming raised his hand. The Gotham scepter pulsed with runes and flew back into his grip. He didn't intend to duel with the staff sword. He sheathed the sword and restored the scepter to its original form. Arrogant, Ra's snapped, offended. He launched into a preemptive strike. From long experience, he had prepared 5 or 6 lethal counters for a moves like this. Tonight, however, was full of surprises. Li Ming parried, firmly and expertly. The force of the counter made Ra's hand tingle. None of the responses Ra's had anticipated were effective. Quickly, he realized Li Ming had been holding back earlier, and the initiative shifted. Holding the Gotham scepter, Li Ming pressed the attack. With each blow, Ra's retreated. In a few moves, Li Ming found an opening and sent him flying. The scepter flashed, lightning writhed along its length, and Li Ming activated the lightning chain. Ra's only managed a momentary block before his katana shattered under the surge. The lightning pierced his chest, the electric blaze charring the wound. Ra's fell. Diana froze, staring from Li Ming to Ra's fallen body and back again. If Li Ming was this powerful, why had he seemed weak before? It clicked for her in an instant. She snorted softly at him. Just as she was about to speak, Li Ming pointed at Ra's body. Diana looked and saw him rising, his wounds knitting together at a terrifying speed. Immortal? She asked. More or less, Li Ming said. In Gotham, nobody stays dead the way you think. Ra's did not attack again. He had realized, bitterly, that he could not defeat the pair before him. Do you believe me now? Li Ming asked, lowering the scepter. The demonstration was over. It was time to negotiate. He didn't have the demon's head at hand, and he knew Ra's immortality came from the Lazarus pit. To truly kill Ra's, 2 things were needed: the demon's head and Bruce Wayne. Neither could be missing. I agree on one point. Gotham needs a Dark Knight, Li Ming said. Whether you're here or not, I will ensure Bruce walks that path. Roz remained guarded. I know what you want, Li Ming continued. After living 2,000 years, do you still care so much for hollow fame? Li Ming's little pout tightened something in Roz's chest. This man understood him unnervingly well. You want to be the pivotal figure in Bruce's transformation, Li Ming said. It's not impossible. How? Roz finally asked. Bruce has principles. He resists killing. I imagine you wouldn't want the future Dark Knight to hold to a no-kill rule. A no-kill rule? Roz scoffed. Ridiculous. Li Ming nodded. So if you want Bruce to become the Dark Knight you envision, you need him to break that rule. Li Ming smiled. What would be more impressive than Bruce killing you, the man who's led the League of Assassins for centuries? When the Dark Knight's legend spreads, everyone will say it was you who taught him to cross that line by giving your life. You become his creator, his mentor. The world will chant your name. Ra's al Ghul, Li Ming said. Diana looked at Li Ming with a strange expression, so obvious, so clumsy a manipulation. Who would fall for it? Roz fell silent for a long moment, then said slowly, You know how to manipulate people. Diana raised an eyebrow at Li Ming, as if to say, You're exposed, aren't you? But I accept, Roz added. Diana was bewildered. Roz had considered his options, an heir who would carry his legacy, and death. With Bruce now protected by the two people in front of him, producing an heir seemed impossible. Being remembered as the Dark Knight's mentor was acceptable, and for once, Roz, tired of an existence that had stretched too long, wanted to die. Li Ming would never explain to Diana that the key to manipulation is to see what your opponent truly wants. Wonder Woman seemed a little more naive than in the tales, surprisingly easy to sway. Chapter 136. Do you know Steve? Li Ming had seriously considered making Bruce break his no-kill rule. Before, his power was weak, and he told himself that if he could soften Bruce a little, he might leave himself some room. Now things were different. With control over Gotham, and with his relationship with Bruce, if he still managed to push Bruce to the point of wanting to kill, Li Ming would have to question himself. Many people called Batman's no-kill rule one of his charms. Li Ming disagreed. Those who praised it hadn't thought about ordinary GCPD officers or the people living in Gotham's neighborhoods. It was fine to cheer for the moral high ground in comics, movies, or TV, but in the real world, it would be absurd for a crime fighter to capture monsters only to hand them back to a corrupt, ineffective system. Batman existed because crime ran rampant and the authorities failed to act. What was his goal? To stop crime. If he only arrested criminals so they could be released or exploited by the system, what would change? Repeat that over and over, and the streets wouldn't be safer. Some argued that Batman could maim instead of kill, but vigilante maiming is still a crime, so why not finish the job? Others said if he started killing, Batman himself would fall into depravity. Li Ming thought that was an excuse for weak will. The panic that a single compromise would lead to moral collapse was dramatized by writers. Breaking the no-kill rule didn't mean murdering every petty criminal. It meant eliminating the incorrigible, the truly monstrous, those who would never stop hurting people. If citizens learned to imitate a killer, criminals should be the ones to fear. And if people preferred vigilantism to the police, that only proved the system had lost their trust. The supremacy of law argument was even sillier to Li Ming. Batman existed because the law failed. If the law actually worked, Batman wouldn't be needed, and no law actually sanctioned a masked, armored vigilante. If protecting the people means turning dangerous criminals over to corrupt officials who misuse legal loopholes to keep harming others, what is he protecting? A Batman that only perpetuated the cycle hadn't improved Gotham at all. That was his private view. He admired Bruce Wayne, but he disagreed with the no-kill rule. Luckily, in this world, Li Ming could influence Bruce. Ra's al Ghul had left Gotham with the imposter Ninja Master, and that departure eliminated a serious threat. The Court of Owls' leader had defected. What remained were just targets. As for the city's other notorious villains, Li Ming could release one now and then to liven things up. Between the Gotham Group and the Gotham Gang, those problems would be dealt with, and Li Ming's control would only grow stronger. Friday, how is Bruce? He asked. He is safe. Have Penguin and the others pick him up. No need for him to come here. Understood, sir. Once assured Bruce was fine, Li Ming turned his attention to Diana, who had been glancing at him more than once. The most important thing was the Wonder Woman beside him. Why was she here, where she shouldn't be, and why was she standing so close? All right, he said. Your turn to talk. Who are you? She asked, then answered. My name is Diana. I'm from Paradise Island. Her eyes flicked around. I will be your master in the future. When? 1918. Diana watched his face to see his reaction. Li Ming only frowned, his thinking look. He'd guessed correctly. In the future, he would go to Diana's world in 1918. According to her story, she returned to Paradise Island after World War I and didn't reappear in the human world until a century later, which matched the established plot. Wonder Woman 1984 was a separate continuity, DC had said. Normally, Mission World timelines were continuous. Arrivals followed the last occurrence. Could a mission send someone back earlier? Li Ming suspected so. If his future self had needed Diana to hide that time frame, there had to be a reason. Spatial concerns, paradox avoidance, something important enough to keep concealed. Then again, if it was just about protecting the timeline, why had his future self sent Diana to find him in 1989 now, while his present self didn't yet know her? Li Ming knew himself. His future self either needed to remind him of something crucial or, less nobly, wanted to secure some advantage. There must be more you can tell me, he said. You're not surprised at all. How boring. Diana murmured. When you left, you only said I could find you in Gotham in 1989, but you forbade me from revealing what happened in 1918. You told me I only needed to say one thing for you to believe me, Li Ming said. What? Mysterio. That name confirmed her. It fit the pattern Li Ming expected. Smoke and mirrors, one little trigger to prove identity. He smiled. If she was playing the role of master, it was just that, a part. Diana faltered, then blinked, looking sheepish. Li Ming grinned more broadly. Diana might be the daughter of Zeus, and she had lived for untold years, but most of that time was spent secluded on Paradise Island among women. Her contact with the outside world had been brief, enough to return to the island after World War I. She couldn't disclose much, but Li Ming had already gleaned useful things. First, his trip to 1918 would be atypical. If his future self had to hide it, it was likely for spatial reasons. Second, he could learn things to manipulate future alliances. You mentioned Paradise Island and Atlantis strengthening ties. What's that about? Diana brightened. You suggested it. Mother now has a good relationship with Queen Atlanta of Atlantis. Did you say I could tell you about that? Li Ming asked. Yes, she said quickly. Atlantis. Li Ming thought of Aquaman. If Atlanta and Hippolyta were on good terms, that relationship could be shaped early. He had an idea. Bloodlines could be arranged. Aquaman would one day be king of Atlantis, but that was years away. If he planned now, cultivated influence and ties, when Aquaman matured, it would be easier to arrange whatever lineage advantages he wanted. Li Ming still had one more question. He called softly, Diana? She smiled at him. Yes? Do you know Steve? Who is that? She replied. Chapter 137, Paradise Island is covered in roses. So what exactly are we? Li Ming asked. Diana looked at him with a depth of feeling that made her eyes go red. I love you, she choked out. I have for the past 70 years. I've missed you so much. She threw herself into his arms and hugged him tightly. The armor was a little prickly, but Li Ming's chest warmed despite the awkwardness. It was their first meeting, but Diana's devotion, waiting for him for 70 years, stirred a fondness in him he hadn't expected. He didn't worry about whether she loved his future self or his present one. Who could refuse Wonder Woman, who had spent decades waiting? Just then, Li Ming's phone rang, and Diana finally let go. Lei, you all right? Bruce's voice came through loud enough for Diana to hear. I'm fine, Li Ming replied. That's good. We met up with Gordon and Penguin. We're heading back. After Penguin became mayor, the people of Gotham took to calling him Mayor Penguin affectionately, and he accepted the nickname with pleasure. Okay, we'll wait for you here. We? Bruce sounded puzzled, but assumed other members of the Gotham gang had already arrived. When they reached the scene of the attack, the group was surprised to find a striking, heroic-looking woman standing beside Li Ming. Diana had changed out of her armor into a fitted trench coat, and she was holding Li Ming's arm. Hello, Bruce asked bluntly. Are you Li's girlfriend? Diana glanced at Li Ming. He nodded. There was no harm in admitting it. He worried briefly that she might be uncomfortable meeting some of the Gotham gang's members. Her face lit up into a radiant smile. Hello, I'm Diana Prince, she said. Li Ming noticed the surname, Prince. Bruce gave a welcoming smile. I'm Bruce Wayne. On hearing she was Li Ming's girlfriend, the others rushed over to introduce themselves. Penguin was effusive. Hello, I'm Oswald Cobblepot, Li Ming's deputy. Whenever Li Ming was present, Penguin always introduced himself that way. It was his proudest title. Among Li Ming's subordinates, Oswald saw himself as closest to his boss. To Penguin's surprise, Diana already knew him. Li told me long ago that you're his best aide, she said warmly. Penguin's eyes widened with flattered delight. Li Ming was grateful. Penguin hadn't asked when long ago was. Diana's answer, 70 years, would have been awkward to explain. He hadn't expected Diana and Penguin to hit it off so easily. He'd have to prepare himself for their chemistry. Are you all okay? Li Ming asked Gordon. Bruce shook his head. Fish's people chased us for a while, then peeled off to support their allies. Penguin added. Butch, too. They went the same way, like there was someone important over there. Li Ming shrugged. No need to pursue Fish. The mastermind is probably the Court of Owls. Besides, a lot of strange people have been appearing in the city lately. We shouldn't create more work for the police. He meant the Gotham gang would handle things themselves. Gordon agreed with a weary sigh. Damn it. Ever since Indian Hill, Gotham's been swamped with weird people and bizarre incidents. Even the dead don't seem to rest anymore, Brock grumbled. The morgue's turned into a hotel. Fortunately, we have the Gotham gang, Brock added, relieved. Otherwise, who knows what would happen to Gotham? With us around, the city's not in too much danger, Li Ming said. Then, to Gordon and the others, don't worry too much. Go home and get some rest. Brock clapped Gordon on the shoulder. Definitely, especially you. Go home and rest. The group dispersed, and Diana naturally accompanied Li Ming back to Wayne Manor. On the drive, Bruce couldn't hide his curiosity. He'd never heard Li Ming mention her. Diana happily chatted about Li Ming with Bruce and Alfred, revealing an intimate understanding of him. What puzzled Bruce was Diana's description of Li Ming as mischievous and hard to read. Li Ming felt a little embarrassed at the caricature. Bruce, however, thought Li Ming seemed gentle and assumed Diana must be teasing. Alfred at the wheel nodded knowingly. If she knew that much, she must be Li Ming's official girlfriend. Once at Wayne Manor, Diana didn't ask for a separate room. She went straight into Li Ming's. A little forward, aren't you? Li Ming teased. I waited so long, she said softly. I don't want to be apart from you, even for a moment. She showed him the silver bracelets on her right wrist. Each bore a small engraved flower. Li Ming felt a flicker of recognition but couldn't quite place it. Friday quickly identified the bloom. Rose, the system said. Yes, Diana replied, smiling as she traced the engraving. I spent a long time carving them. Li Ming believed her. The metal of her bracelets came from a fragment of Zeus's shield, the Aegis, no easy thing to work on. You said roses represented the longing of love, she went on. So after you left, I planted a rose seed on Paradise Island every day. 70 years passed, and now the island is covered in roses. Her eyes brimmed with tears. Now I've finally waited long enough. Li Ming felt deeply moved. Time hadn't dulled her longing. It had burned it into something even more profound. For him, her appearance had been sudden. For her, he had been late. He opened his arms. Diana smiled and rushed into them. He held her tightly. Li Ming accepted the woman who had come from Paradise Island as his girlfriend. Diana, after a lifetime of waiting, had finally found him. Wonder Woman, so moving. Chapter 138, Catwoman's Mentor. Diana Bruce was sparring with Alfred early that morning. Last night's attack had made it clear there were still many hidden threats in Gotham, and Bruce had thrown himself into training even harder. From Li Ming's point of view, if you measured him by levels, Bruce was roughly a level 3 to 4 fighter now, far stronger than when he first arrived in Gotham. For a 13-year-old, that was impressive. So diligent, Li Ming thought. Diana woke later and joined them for breakfast. She ate what Alfred had prepared, then glanced out to the garden where Bruce continued training and smiled. Who says otherwise? He even insisted on dragging me out here, she said. Sitting opposite Diana was Selina, Catwoman, who, with a new haircut, looked a little better than she had the year before. Still, beside Diana, she seemed young and inexperienced. Since Fish's death, Selina had been drifting through Gotham. Two of the friends closest to her had suffered badly. Ivy had run away from the Gotham Group's homeless youth shelter. She loved street life, but lacked Selina's skills. Recently, Ivy had provoked a strange person in Crime Alley who could make people age rapidly. She was chased, fell into the sewers, and vanished. Bridget, whose brothers were arsonists, had been abused and forced into setting fires. She died in a blaze and was later taken to Indian Hill, where Hugo resurrected her as the villain Firefly. Her memories were not fully restored. She still thought of Selina as a friend, but she was no longer the same Bridget. Selina had come back to Wayne Manor to clear her head. Bruce welcomed her, and Alfred's opinion of her had softened. He thought she had qualities his young master could learn from. Because Selina was often near Bruce, he worried for her safety and insisted she train in combat. Selina, older than Bruce and already dangerous enough that 2 or 3 opponents would struggle to catch her, found his concern excessive. Diana reached over and squeezed Selina's hand. "Someone caring about you is a good thing, Selina," she said. Li Ming, having finished handling Gotham Group matters, came to the table. He kissed Diana. She picked up a piece of bread and handed it to him with a contented smile. Selina felt a little full at the display. Bruce and Alfred, taking a break, joined them. Bruce said smugly, "Alfred says I'm at the same level you were at, Lee." Diana looked puzzled. "Did Alfred teach you?" "Of course, Miss Diana," Alfred replied, puffing out his chest a little. He enjoyed his role as mentor. Li Ming mouthed, "Beginner's mentor," and Diana laughed. Alfred glanced at Selina and said with some awkwardness, "Young Master Bruce, Miss Selina's fighting style is very different from mine. I'm afraid I can't teach her much." Selina's style was acrobatic and fluid, unlike Alfred's more open, expansive method, and Alfred felt uncomfortable taking on her training. Diana, seeing the two of them sitting close, asked Li Ming about their relationship. He made a kissing gesture, and Diana immediately understood. "I can teach Selina," Diana said suddenly. Bruce, Selina, and Alfred looked at her, then turned to Li Ming. "I can't beat her," he admitted without hesitation. The room was surprised. Diana's beauty and poise made her seem almost untouchable, and even Alfred avoided sparring with Li Ming now. But Li Ming didn't care about pride. It was simply the truth. In physical fitness and skill, Diana was on another level. As the daughter of Zeus and the Amazon Queen, she carried demigod blood. Paradise Island didn't trade much with the outside world. Its inhabitants were women who trained in combat every day, and Diana was among their best. Beyond fighting, she had studied many civilizations and mastered numerous disciplines. For Selina to have Diana as a teacher was an incredible stroke of luck. "I agree," Selina said happily, and Bruce, trusting Li Ming's judgment, thought it was an excellent idea. After breakfast, Li Ming and Diana walked in the garden. Li Ming asked what had prompted her to offer. "I need something to do," Diana replied. "I know you're busy, so I won't be an imposition. I'll train Selina at Wayne Manor and be home every day." Li Ming felt his heart warm. Diana was more than a girlfriend to him. She was the picture of a virtuous partner and a loving presence. "Is there anything you need to do after leaving Paradise Island?" he asked, not wanting to delay her. "Yes," Diana said. "Queen Atlanta of Atlantis is in trouble, and my mother asked me to see if I could help." "There are still 2 months until the time agreed with Queen Atlanta," Li Ming said, "so you still have time to be with me." Diana brightened. Li Ming thought of his own future plans. The reason his older self had wanted Diana nearby was to meet the young heir of Atlantis. Based on what he knew of Target's current abilities, the young Aquaman's powers had not yet emerged, so there was nothing urgent now. But making arrangements early could make it easier to secure what he might need later, and it could give him a chance to influence events in Atlantis. He kept those calculations close and instead said, "Okay, I'll go with you." Diana hesitated, not wanting to be a burden. "If you're busy—" "Diana, I want to spend more time with you," Li Ming cut in, smiling. She melted into his arms and enjoyed the warmth. Leaving Diana at the manor, Li Ming returned to the Gotham Group headquarters, a skyscraper they had acquired. Riddler had suggested building a new headquarters, but Li Ming had other plans. He didn't need to fuss over the day-to-day. His focus was on the villain's movements. 2 reports arrived from Fish and Butch about last night. Fish said that when her side began to get the upper hand, she had feared capturing Bruce would expose their operation. To prevent the clone from being exposed, she led her people away from the main battlefield, and Butch had questioned the move, but she had talked her way out of it. Butch's report was different. He claimed he'd seen Fish at the clone and suspected she planned an on-the-spot swap. Fearing she might succeed, he and his people had rushed in and tricked Fish into withdrawing under the pretext of preventing exposure. Fish hadn't noticed. Ming couldn't help laughing at the 2 versions. He remembered Diana teasing him for having a dark sense of humor, and he shrugged. To control villains, you sometimes have to be worse than they are, he told himself as a half-excuse. Then he turned to another intelligence file and paused. Jerome had been resurrected. Chapter 139, Jerome's Ensnarement. That morning, Dwight had gathered a crowd of Jerome's followers. He had promised them that today, Jerome would return. Dwight's technical skill, however, was poor. He tried again and again, but the man beneath the scraps never awakened. Pressured by the restless mob, Dwight steeled himself, cut Jerome's face off, and pasted it to his own. He calmed the crowd by preaching that Jerome was not a single man, but an idea everyone could become, and their fervor only grew. These people were mostly dissatisfied with their lives. They had followed Jerome to vent their frustrations, and that made them easy to sway. Afterwards, Dwight led them to seize a TV station. Gordon arrived quickly. Dwight even used recordings of Jerome to call Gordon on air, and the believers roared with laughter. Jerome had been seen only a few times on camera, once at the police station, once at a charity gala. And because his appearances were so scarce, his followers replayed them obsessively. The clip of his first appearance at the police station had become a sort of scripture. They could recite every line. Dwight, however, was a crude mimic. He kept copying Jerome's mannerisms and phrases, but with none of the sinister vitality. As Gordon put it, Dwight did one thing Jerome never did. He bored people. Dwight's arrest was inevitable. Gordon's boredom evaporated when his ex, Xiao Lai, called. The real Jerome had come back. Xiao Lai, who'd left Gordon after Barbara's constant meddling when boundaries had never been set, was the one who told him. Jerome had resurrected at the police station. He'd held Xiao Lai hostage to learn what had happened in the months since his death, then stormed the TV station, posed as an officer, and took Dwight. He wanted his face back. Jerome was smarter than Dwight. He planned to announce his return with a spectacle. He'd gone to Gotham's power station, brought explosives he'd taken from the police evidence locker, and tied Dwight up there. He'd also stolen a news van and hooked it into the station's broadcast lines so that when he flipped the switch, the whole city would see him live. Everything was set. Just as Jerome was about to go on the air, Ming walked out of the darkness. "Welcome back to Gotham, Jerome," Ming said. Jerome, knife in hand, spun around and bowed in a grotesque little salute, one hand in front, one behind his back. "Whoa, King of Gotham, welcome to your power plant. Ha! Are you here to stop me?" Ming asked. Jerome's look at Ming was complicated, almost like someone who'd expected this all along. Ming shook his head. "Jerome, do you remember what you promised me?" Jerome did. "Next time?" Ming pressed on. "So, have you thought about it? To work for me, to set the city alight." Jerome tugged at the skin stapled to his face. It was unstable. 2 staples creaked. "I have a question I'm curious about." He glanced at Ming. "You're the king of Gotham. Why reshape it? Why not destroy it?" "Not destroy," Ming said. "Reshape. Gotham is like an old wall that's been whitewashed. From the outside it looks whole, but it's full of cracks. You, Jerome," he said, pointing, "are my tool. You help me expose those cracks so the Gotham gang can fill them with new materials." "You want me to help eliminate latent dangers?" Jerome asked. Ming smiled. "Yes, and in the process you can spread your ideas across Gotham, just like your imitator, who's already instigated 3 or 4 attacks. Then even if you're not here," Ming went on, "there will always be another Jerome. Interesting, isn't it?" "Indeed interesting," Jerome agreed, laughing. Jerome had never been interested in money or territory, but the idea of his influence spreading through Gotham struck something deep in him. He raised a finger. "One more question." You knew Galavan's plan from the start, didn't you? That's right, Ming admitted without hesitation. Jerome was baffled. Then why didn't you tell me before? If you had, I would have gone with you. Ming smiled and asked his own question. What's the secret of great comedy, Jerome? Jerome grinned, and two staples popped open on his face. He knew the answer. The words were his. Timing, he cackled. Exactly. The old you still held traces of innocence. Now, Ming looked at Jerome's permanent grin. It's just right. Ming had had chances to save Jerome, but had chosen instead to push him over the edge. In the future, Batman would feel something missing without the Joker as an adversary. But Ming had other reasons. He did not want a wholly peaceful Gotham. He wanted a city that maintained controlled chaos, enough disorder to justify the Gotham Gang's existence, enough to keep producing villains he could manipulate. If he could hold the balance, those villains could become tools, sharp weapons in his hands. In a media-shaped world like Gotham, Ming could use Jerome to implant an infectious ideology that anyone could become the Joker if things went wrong. Even as overall order improved and crime declined, as long as that ideology persisted, new villains would keep appearing. Those villains would be clever, easy to capture, and likely to flourish even more in the reincarnation space. Last question, Jerome said. He spat a ragged scrap of skin out of his mouth. I actually had no choice, did I? Plop, plop. That's right, Ming said, but I prefer my subordinates to exercise their own initiative. Behind him, a portal opened, shimmering like a wound in the air. As Gotham's eternal nightmare, or as another anonymous corpse on its streets, we both know what you'll choose, Jerome. Whoa, what is that, magic? Jerome exclaimed, pulling the loose skin at his mouth down and staring in amazement. Gotham is small. The world is big, Jerome, Ming tempted. Follow me, and you can become the nightmare of many worlds. Interesting. When do we start? Jerome's excitement made him almost childlike. Ming shook his head. Gather your people first. I'll contact you. For now, begin your comeback performance. He looked at Dwight, strapped to bombs among the Transformers. Tonight Gotham is going to be pitch black, so good night. Heh, I like a boss like you. Jerome bowed again theatrically. Good night, Your Excellency, King of Gotham. Chapter 140, The Joker Gang is Formed. Gotham's power grid went dark, plunging the city into a single night of chaos. Riots erupted across neighborhoods, but the municipal team led by Penguin and the Riddler moved with brutal efficiency. With Friday's assistance, they brought order back quickly. Gotham Group also committed personnel and resources, arresting perpetrators, providing rescue and relief, and won another round of public praise. Even Bruce, hearing the news, ordered Wayne Enterprises to offer economic aid. With the municipality, Gotham Group, and Wayne Enterprises working together, no force could truly overturn Gotham. Still, the fallout from the blackout continued to simmer. Jerome's rhetoric had begun to attract a following. Ming could improve Gotham's external environment, but he could not change people's hearts. Oppression was everywhere. That was the fertile soil in which the Joker's devotees grew. Jerome's taken the block next to Crime Alley? What is he trying to be? A gang boss? Gordon muttered in the GCPD, rubbing his forehead. Jerome's followers were different from ordinary gangs. They came from all walks of life. Wherever there was resentment and injustice, there were Jerome's supporters, some even inside the police. But Jerome did not offer a path to a better life. He drove people to extremes and destruction. Fish faced the same headache. Overnight, the block adjacent to her territory had been occupied by Jerome. She was stunned. He'd managed to wrest turf from the Gotham gang, but she quickly mobilized to retake it. She'd underestimated him. Although Jerome's crew had only recently assembled, their loyalty was ironclad. Fish's men could not break through. To protect her core interests, Fish had no choice but to sit down with Jerome and broker a truce. During the negotiations, Jerome lounged with his feet on the table, humming to himself and paying Fish no mind. She was furious but could not reason with a madman. He closed his eyes for a moment and murmured, remembering circus days gone by. Then he laughed, sharp, unstoppable. Joker, he declared, clapping his hands. From now on, my people will be called the Joker Gang. Fish felt a chill at the name. The Joker Gang didn't operate like traditional crews. Typically, a boss supplied funds and men risked their lives for pay. Jerome's followers, however, came with their own supplies and fought on sheer passion. Only the few who truly couldn't afford food were kept from starving. Jerome didn't care to bankroll anyone else. Yet their loyalty was remarkable. They wanted one thing: to follow Jerome and cause chaos. They would fight anyone, anywhere, as long as they could go out, lose themselves, and vent. If they died, they'd laugh, and it would be over. To Li Ming, most of these people were simply unstable elements, individuals more inclined toward extremism than the average Gotham citizen. He permitted Jerome to gather them so their nature could be exposed. Once dealt with, his control over Gotham would be firmer. Collateral damage was inevitable, but Li Ming wasn't Gotham's caretaker. He was its ruler. "Why aren't you smiling? Celebrate with a grin. The Joker gang is born," Jerome demanded, admonishing Fish with a mock frown. Fish stared at him, at the grotesque makeup plastered across his face to cover missing skin. The clown paint didn't hide the wound, it made him more terrifying. "We're rivals," she said bluntly. "Why so serious?" Jerome shrugged, then motioned to Butch and the others, many of them wearing the same cracked white face and red grin. "Everyone out. We have adult matters to discuss." Fish studied Jerome and could tell he had something he wanted to say only to her. She signaled for her people to fall back. "Butch," she said to her lieutenant, "don't worry about me." He hesitated, then nodded. If it came to a fight, Fish would beat Jerome anyway. When the room cleared to just the two of them, Fish asked, "What is it?" Jerome leaned forward. "Be gentle with your people, Fish," he said. "I'm also one of Lord Li Ming's." Fish's eyes narrowed. Before she could respond, her phone rang. It was Li Ming. "He's telling the truth, Fish," Li Ming said quickly on the call. "From now on, the two of you should cooperate." Li Ming hung up. Jerome's grin widened into another laugh, louder, celebratory. The timing of the call made it clear. Both gangs were operating under Li Ming's oversight. The two of them reviewed territory and intelligence. Together with the Court of Owls, Fish's gang, and the newly declared Joker gang, now controlled nearly 90% of Gotham's criminal forces. It became obvious Li Ming needed them to neutralize the Court of Owls. Although the court's actions had also been steered by Li Ming, the court still controlled its own resources, and Li Ming, like any victor, wanted everything for himself. Complicating matters, the court's botched attempt to replace Bruce had stalled the development of an antidote for Fish's freaks. That delay left the freaks deeply resentful, prime material for Fish to exploit. The Joker gang, eager for confrontation, would relish fights with the court's high-ranking members. And because Fish and Jerome occasionally clashed to purge insubordinate elements, the court found itself sometimes allying with Fish to take on Jerome, and other times with Jerome to take on Fish. The back-and-forth bred chaos inside the city's underworld. Ra's al Ghul, having returned, no longer meddled in the court's affairs. His attention was fixed on Bruce. Bruce had begun patrolling the streets himself, taking up the fight against crime, an act that delighted Ra's, who saw the stirrings of Gotham's dark night. Meanwhile, the court sought help from the municipality and received none. Penguin, citing that the court families were not part of the Gotham gang, refused assistance. Instead, Penguin and the Riddler dispatched teams to seize the court family's assets, folding them into the Gotham Group. As the court weakened, the Gotham Group grew stronger. After more than a month of pressure, the court could no longer hold its footing. Catherine convened the court personally and announced the restart of the Gotham Destruction Plan.